Chapter 787. The woman who suddenly fell. The streets were still filled with voices and curses. The few prisoners had probably suffered a lot in the cell. Now they could be beaten and scolded as they pleased, as if they were numb puppets. However, they were only a kilometer away from the entrance of the market. If someone really came to rescue the prisoners, they should have come. Otherwise, they would have to go to the entrance of the market and shout for the executioners to hold back. Unfortunately, even when the prison carts gradually disappeared, no one seemed to be rescuing the prisoners. The young man in the tea house who had previously made a solemn vow laughed dryly and said, "Maybe there might be an ambush at the entrance of the market. Why don't we go to the entrance of the market to take a look?" "No, if there's really an ambush, what if we suffer?" Gu Dajiang also heard the conversation and nodded repeatedly. He said sternly to Gu Yundong, "You're not allowed to go either." Gu Yundong did not know whether to laugh or cry. "I don't plan to go. Let's just wait for the news. They'll be executed at noon. We can go back after lunch." Gu Dajiang was relieved. He was really afraid that his daughter would go and watch the beheading in order to warn herself. It was so bloody and not suitable for girls to see. It was because of this that he had to follow her out. Gu Yundong and his daughter were not the only ones. There were not many people on the second floor who left after watching the commotion. They seemed to be waiting for noon, causing the entire tea house's business to be exceptionally good. The crowd downstairs had already dispersed. Some went to the entrance of the market, while others went home after watching the commotion and throwing the rotten vegetables. Gu Yundong and Gu Dajiang drank tea and waited until noon. They also ordered a few dishes. When it was time, someone quickly ran over and said, "Those bandits have been executed." "That's great, that's great." Cheers instantly erupted in the tea house. Gu Yundong was shocked. She saw that many people's faces revealed expressions of relief. Some people's eyes even turned red and they clenched their fists tightly. She instantly understood that everyone hated this kind of bandit who committed all kinds of evil. Gu Yundong also smiled happily. After settling the bill with Gu Dajiang, she got up and went downstairs. Shui Rong went to bring the carriage over. While Gu Yundong and Shui Rong were waiting downstairs, many people came down from the second floor. The entrance of the tea house suddenly became crowded. In addition, many people had returned from watching the commotion at the entrance of the market. There were suddenly many more people on the streets. Gu Yundong and Gu Dajiang looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They should have left later. Now they could only hope that Shui Rong would bring the carriage over as soon as possible. Just as they were thinking about it, she saw Shui Rong walking over. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief. After helping Gu Dajiang into the carriage, she asked Shui Rong to leave quickly and go home. Unexpectedly, just as Shui Rong pulled the reins and before the horse could take a step, a person suddenly staggered out and fell straight in front of the carriage. Shui Rong was speechless. "You can't play like this. If you want to extort me, at least wait until my carriage starts to move." There were so many people watching. They could all testify that you fell down yourself. The person who fell to the ground was a woman with a bag in her hand. When she fell just now, everything in the bag fell out and a few even rolled under the carriage. She picked them up in a hurry, panic on her face. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it." "They'll pick them up now." Shui Rong was stunned. "She's not here to extort?" If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 788. Is this her aunt? The carriage did not move for a long time. Gu Yundong lifted the curtain and looked outside. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" Shui Rong pointed ahead and said, "Someone fell out. There should be a lot of people and she was squeezed out." After saying that, the people who had been squeezing around hurriedly stood far away, as if they were afraid that this person would cling to them. Gu Yundong looked at the person. She looked like a thin woman. Her hair was messy and her clothes were very tattered. The weather was already a little cold, but her clothes were still very thin. They hung loosely on her body, making her look like a refugee when Gu Yundong entered the city last year. More importantly, Gu Yundong saw some scars on her thin arms. She held an old bag in her hand and squatted on the ground to pick up the wooden carvings scattered nearby. Yes, they were all wooden carvings. They were very small. There were wooden hairpins, spinning tops for children, and small boxes. The most exquisite one was the small screen that had fallen out but was already broken. Gu Yundong had just finished looking when Gu Dajiang alighted from the carriage. He squatted down and helped pick up the wooden carvings on the ground. Shui Rong and Gu Yundong also hurriedly got down. A few of the wooden carvings rolled further away, and Shui Rong crawled under the carriage. Gu Dajiang stuffed all the wooden carvings in his hand into Gu Yundong's hand. The latter carried them to the woman. "Annie, this is for you. Keep it well. Be careful." "Ah, thank you, Mississippi." The woman opened the bag and placed the wooden carvings inside with trembling fingers. Then she kept apologizing. "I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to fall in front of your carriage. I've wasted your time. I'll leave now. Thank you." As she spoke, she turned around and staggered forward. Gu Yundong sighed softly and turned to return to the carriage. Unexpectedly, when she turned around, she saw Gu Dajiang standing rooted to the ground in shock. Then, he suddenly took 2 steps forward and grabbed the woman's arm. Gu Yundong was shocked. "Father, what are you doing?" The woman was also frightened. She lowered her head and wanted to avoid him, but Gu Dajiang was strong. Not to mention that this woman was skinny and weak. Even if she were strong, she wouldn't be able to break free. She was being pulled by a man in public. How could she not be embarrassed? "What are you doing? Let go of me." Someone was already looking over. Gu Yundong quickly stepped forward to block the 2 of them and pulled Gu Dajiang's hand away. "Father, what are you doing? Let's talk nicely." Gu Dajiang stared at the woman with anticipation and fear in his eyes. His throat was dry. After a long time, he said in a hoarse voice, "You raise your head for me to see." The woman was shocked and quickly took a step back. Gu Dajiang took a step forward, and Gu Yundong looked suspiciously at the woman. The woman felt her head buzzing as if many people were pointing at them. What are these 2 doing? Aren't they afraid of being laughed at in broad daylight? This man looks quite rich and the woman seems to be a beggar. Do people nowadays have such strange tastes? Has he taken a fancy to a beggar? The long-term malnutrition made the woman lose her balance and feel dizzy. She lowered her head and strode forward. Gu Dajiang suddenly shouted, "Gu Dafeng." Gu Yundong raised her head in shock and looked at the figure with her back facing her. Gu Dafeng? Her eldest aunt's name? This was her eldest aunt? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 789, Brother and Sister Reunion. Gu Yundong had a deep breath, took a few quick steps and suddenly stood in front of the woman. The woman kept her head lowered and never looked up. Hence, she did not notice what she looked like previously. Gu Dajiang could tell her identity from her voice. They had been siblings for many years. He was too familiar with his sister. "Dafeng, you're Gu Dafeng, right?" Gu Dajiang also walked over quickly. He didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. He was afraid that she wasn't Gu Dafeng, afraid that the hope that he had painstakingly ignited would be extinguished again. Finally, the woman slowly raised her head, trembling. That familiar face made Gu Dajiang's eyes turn red and his body tremble. Gu Dafeng saw Gu Dajiang clearly and tears streamed down her face. "Dajiang, are you Dajiang?" There was also a look of disbelief on her face. It was as if everything was a dream. Gu Dafeng reached out, wanting to touch her but not daring to. In front of her was Gu Dajiang. He had the same face as before. No, he looked much better than before and had gained a lot of weight. However, the clothes he was wearing were worlds apart from before. She did not dare to recognize him or believe her eyes. A gust of wind blew over. It was unknown if it was cold or shocking, but Gu Dafeng's body trembled violently. Seeing this, Gu Yundong quickly took off his cloak and put it on her. Gu Dafeng couldn't hold it in anymore and burst into tears. "Brother, you're my brother. You're really my brother. I've finally seen you." "Boo-hoo," she cried sadly. Gu Yundong hugged her tightly and felt the touch of bones under her cloak. She knew that her eldest aunt must have had a very difficult time over the past year. "Sister." Gu Dajiang's tears fell uncontrollably. "We finally found you. We finally found you." "Boo-hoo," Gu Dafeng only cried. All the grievances and suppressed pain in her heart were released, making her unable to say a word. The surrounding people looked at each other. What was going on? Was this a reunion between siblings? It actually looked a little sad. Judging from the way this family were dressed, they must be living well. However, from the woman's appearance, it could be seen that she had suffered a lot. Some people looked over and whispered to each other, making guesses. Gu Yundong frowned and said to Gu Dajiang, "Father, let's get into the carriage and go back first." Gu Dajiang nodded repeatedly. "Sister, come get in the carriage first. It's windy and cold outside." Gu Dafeng shook her head repeatedly as she cried, "Boo-hoo. No, I can't." "Your brother-in-law." Before she could finish speaking, her breath dissipated. Her legs went weak and she fainted. "Eldest aunt, what's wrong?" Fortunately, Gu Yundong had been supporting her. Otherwise she would have fallen to the ground. Gu Dajiang quickly hugged her. Let's go to the medical center first. Coincidentally there was one nearby. Gu Dajiang hurriedly carried her in and kept calling for a doctor. Doctor, quickly save her. Gu Yundong hurriedly instructed Shui Rong to bring the carriage to the side and wait. Then she hurriedly followed. Someone immediately walked out of the clinic and took her pulse carefully. He said, "Don't worry, it's nothing serious. She just hasn't eaten for a long time and is weak." Coupled with her excitement, she fainted. She'll be fine after resting for a while. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 790, Still alive. How great. Gu Dajiang heaved a sigh of relief, but when he thought of how the doctor had said that she hadn't eaten for a long time, he frowned again. He wondered where his sister had been for the past year or so and what kind of life she had led. And brother-in-law. By the way, brother-in-law. Gu Dajiang thought of the wooden carvings. His brother-in-law used to be a carpenter. These wooden carvings should have been carved by his brother-in-law. Back then he had gotten off the carriage to help pick them up because he had seen the wooden carvings. In that case his brother-in-law was still alive. However, their life was probably not easy. Still, at least they were alive. Gu Dajiang heaved a sigh of relief. She looked at the unconscious Gu Dafeng and felt very uneasy. Father, I'll go to the restaurant next door to buy a bowl of porridge. When eldest aunt wakes up, I'll fill her stomach and warm her up, Gu Yundong said softly. Gu Dajiang looked up. Thank you. Not at all. Finding eldest aunt is more important than anything else. She smiled and ran out of the clinic. The crowd had already dispersed. Gu Yundong entered the restaurant next door and ordered a bowl of hot porridge and stir-fried some side dishes. People who had not eaten for a long time should not eat greasy food, so she only made 2 vegetarian dishes with minced meat. When she returned with the food box, eldest aunt Gu was still unconscious. Gu Dajiang frowned at the side, deep in thought. Father, what's wrong? Gu Dajiang sighed slightly and stood up to pull Gu Yundong to the side. He said in a low voice, I'm afraid that she won't be able to take it if I tell her about Mulan. Gu Yundong thought for a moment. Then let's not talk about it for now. Well, tell eldest aunt when she gets better. Sigh, that's good too. With Yuanzhi around, your aunt can be stronger. Gu Yundong felt that, actually father, you don't have to worry too much. Ever since we escaped last year there have been too many such things. In the past year or so, I think eldest aunt and eldest uncle have already prepared for the worst. Although that was the case, before confirming the news, they could still comfort themselves and say that they had a glimmer of hope. As the father and daughter were talking, a faint voice suddenly came from behind. The two of them hurriedly turned around and saw that eldest aunt Gu had indeed woken up. She looked dazed, as if she hadn't registered where she was or remembered what had happened before she had passed out. However, when Gu Dajiang and Gu Yundong stood in front of her, she said with a trembling voice, I'm not dreaming. Brother, it's really you. Gu Dajiang sat on a chair at the side. It's me, sister. I'm Dajiang. You're not dreaming. Gu Yundong obediently greeted, Aunt. Yundong, it's Yundong. She reached out and grabbed Gu Yundong's hand tightly. But compared to Gu Yundong's delicate hands, eldest aunt Gu's hands were so thin that they looked like bones. Gu Yundong felt a little sad. Aunt, the doctor said that you haven't eaten for a long time. I bought porridge. Eat something to fill your stomach first and then we can talk nicely, okay? Gu Dajiang had already taken out a bowl and spoon. He scooped a mouthful and handed it over. Tears welled up in the corners of Gu Dafeng's eyes. She choked up a little and nodded. Then she opened her mouth and took a bite. After swallowing the soft porridge she seemed to warm up. Looking at her brother in front of her, Gu Dafeng wanted to cry and laugh. It was great that her brother was still alive and her niece was fine. She didn't even dare to think about meeting them again in the past. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 791. They are now people of the Zhou mansion. After eating the porridge, Gu Dajiang helped her sit down and asked her in a low voice, Have you been in Xuanhe Prefecture for the past year? Where do you live? Where's brother-in-law? At the mention of her husband, Gu Dafeng's face turned slightly pale. She covered her face with both hands, her voice anguished. Your brother-in-law's legs are broken. Gu Dajiang's pupils constricted. His legs were broken? Gu Yundong also frowned. Indeed, her eldest aunt's life was very difficult. She squatted down and gently stroked her back. She said softly, "Then where are you staying now? Let's bring uncle here and let the doctor take a look. Find the best doctor in the prefectural city. I happen to know someone from Huimin Medical Center. Let's get the doctor from the medical center to take a look. Perhaps he can get better?" Gu Dafeng was stunned and looked up. Really? A glimmer of hope lit in her eyes. Can he really be cured? Gu Yundong did not dare to give her an affirmative answer in case she was disappointed again. "We have to find a doctor to take a look first. If the doctor at Huimin Medical Center can't treat him, well, go to the capital. There will be a way." She knew Song de Jiang in the capital. Gu Dafeng's voice trembled slightly. "Yes, then where is uncle? Shall we pick him up now?" However, at the mention of this, Gu Dafeng fell silent again. After a while she said, He's at the Zhou mansion." "Zhou mansion?" Gu Yundong frowned. "Zhou?" She was suddenly stunned and asked in a low voice, "Is the Zhou mansion you're talking about the one across the street owned by Zhou Dafu?" "Yes." "Why are you there?" Gu Yundong looked at Gu Dafeng. Her clothes were tattered and she was thin. Could it be that Zhou Dafu was abusing them? Gu Dafeng pursed her lips, finding it difficult to speak. "We're servants of the Zhou family now." Gu Dajiang and Gu Yundong's expressions changed at the same time. Eldest aunt and her husband had become servants of the Zhou family. In that case, their lives would be decided by the Zhou family without any freedom. "Brother Yundong, forget it. Our current identities." Gu Dafeng also realized that there was still a huge difference. The Zhou family was rich and powerful. Although her brother seemed to be doing well now, he was probably much worse than the Zhou family. She knew that her eldest brother would definitely feel sorry for her. Knowing that she and her husband were in a difficult situation, he would definitely bring them out. But how? In Gu Dafeng's heart, the Zhou mansion was a huge force. If her eldest brother went against the Zhou mansion, not only would he not be able to bring them out, but she would also implicate her eldest brother. "No matter what, I'm already very happy and satisfied to see you guys again." Gu Dafeng was indeed happy. She thought that she would never see these relatives again in her life. She actually wanted to ask Gu Dajiang if there was any news of her children. Had Mulan and Yuanzhi returned to Yongning Prefecture? However, she did not dare to do so now, afraid that she would receive bad news. Gu Dafeng wiped her tears. "It's getting late. I sneaked out of the Zhou mansion. I have to go back. Otherwise, if I'm discovered, your brother-in-law will be blamed. Will you live in the Xuanhe Prefecture in the future? Then I'll find a chance to come out next time and see you again." She got up and was about to leave when Gu Yundong hurriedly pulled her back. "Eldest aunt, you don't have to go back. If you're servants of the Zhou mansion, we can pay some money and buy you back. When the time comes, we'll take the indenture and remove the slave status. Then our family will be able to live together. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 792, She's old Master Zhou's concubine. She could not understand why her eldest aunt was so pessimistic. Why did she not seem to have any hope at all? It was just freeing 2 servants. Unexpectedly, Gu Dafeng shook her head and smiled bitterly. She won't agree. She won't agree. She? Gu Yundong frowned. Who is she? Zhou Dafu? If Zhou Dafu didn't agree, she would rush to the Zhou residence to beat him up. No, it's not Zhou Dafu. Gu Dafeng's fingers trembled slightly, and her face was a little pale, as if she found it difficult to speak. After a long time, she looked at Gu Dajiang steadily and said in a light voice, Yes, it's Gu Qiuyue. We're Gu Qiuyue's servants now. She won't agree. Gu Dajiang and Gu Yundong looked at her in disbelief, suspecting that there was something wrong with their ears. Gu Qiuyue? Gu Yundong murmured, Isn't Gu Qiuyue dead? Back then it was Fu Ming who told her personally that other than him, Gu Qiuyue, their daughter, and their parents had all died in the chaos. But now, eldest aunt was telling them that Gu Qiuyue was still alive. Not only was she alive, but she also seemed to be living quite well. Gu Dajiang calmed down a little and his expression became especially solemn. He looked at Gu Dafeng and said, Sister, tell me exactly what happened. What did she mean by Gu Qiuyue's servants? This was ridiculous. They were Gu Qiuyue's elder sister and brother-in-law. How could she make her elder sister and brother-in-law sign a slave contract and become her servants? What was she thinking? Gu Dafeng looked at his sullen face and paused for a moment. In the end, she still said, Gu Qiuyue is now old Master Zhou's concubine. Damn it. Even Gu Yundong admired her. Gu Qiuyue was someone who had been married and had children. How could that old man Zhou Dafu take her in as his concubine? Gu Dafeng was talking about what happened last year. Last year they had fled to Qingyuan Prefecture. However, when they were about to reach Qingyuan Prefecture, they were separated from their children and in-laws. At that time they didn't have time to say anything. They didn't even think of where to meet up. It was already good enough that they could save their lives in such a hurry. Gu Dafeng and his husband could only head to the Qingyuan Prefecture that was closest to them. They were a step too late. The Qingyuan Prefecture was already in chaos, and the city gate was wide open. Seeing this, the couple wanted to go elsewhere. Unexpectedly, this chaos affected the city gate. The soldiers who came to reinforce the Qingyuan Prefecture fought with the bandits. The fight was very intense. Before they could dodge, Bian Han's legs were broken by the bandits who had rushed out on their horses to escape. Gu Dafeng looked at her husband, who was in so much pain that he was about to die. She was completely at a loss. With Bian Han in such a state, she couldn't bring him away. Fortunately, the chaos in the city had slowly been eased at this time. A large number of bandits had already been captured or fled, and the order in the city was gradually recovering. Gu Dafeng carried the unconscious Bian Han into the city, wanting to find a doctor to treat his legs. However, where could they find a doctor at a time like this? There were dead people everywhere, people who were seriously injured, medical halls were all closed, and the pharmacies were robbed. They didn't even have a place to rest, let alone find a doctor. After 2 days of delay, Bian Han's legs started to swell and pus gradually, and he was about to be completely crippled because he didn't have time to treat it. Bian Han even had a high fever because of this. If he was not treated, he would not even be able to save his life. Then they met Qiuyue. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 793. Be My Servants. Gu Dafeng and Qiuyue didn't have a good relationship in the past. It was just that the age difference was a little big. Coupled with the fact that they were already married, they rarely met. However, no matter what their relationship was in the past, Gu Dafeng was really happy to meet her family at this time. However, Qiuyue clearly did not think so. For some reason, she had become the concubine of a rich family with the surname Zhou in the prefectural city of Qingyuan Prefecture. Furthermore, she seemed to be very doted on. When she saw Gu Dafeng like that, she only felt happy. However, she was not as happy as someone who met their relatives in a foreign land. Especially when she saw Gu Dafeng's desolate appearance and Bian Han's almost hopeless legs. Qiuyue originally wanted to ignore them. She turned around and left as if she didn't know them. However, she returned not long after and looked at them with a condescending expression. Gu Dafeng, are you trying to save your husband? If you beg me, he'll find a doctor to treat his legs and give him medicine so that you can both survive. Gu Dafeng knew that Qiuyue had gone overboard, but looking at her dying husband, she knelt down and begged her without a word. There was nothing else she could do but beg her. Qiuyue was indeed very happy. She laughed until her entire body was trembling. She squatted down and her eyes were filled with malice. All right, I'll save him, but you'll sell yourselves and sign a contract to become my servants. How about that? Gu Dafeng was shocked. Qiuyue wanted them to be servants? Of course, she was unhappy, but at this point, Gu Dafeng could only accept her fate. Moreover, a day ago she was actually thinking of selling herself to exchange for her husband's life. But now there were refugees everywhere. How many people would put a straw on their heads and sell themselves just to have a bite to eat? This kind of person who did not seem to be a burden and looked like a laborer did not have many buyers. Forget it, she was already prepared to sell herself anyway. Now her master had just changed to Qiuyue. Other than feeling disgusted, there was no other difference. Gu Dafeng agreed and pressed her thumbprint on the indenture along with the unconscious Bian Han. Then she quietly followed Qiuyue back to the Zhou mansion. As expected, Qiuyue found a doctor to treat Bian Han's legs. However, this doctor's medical skills were not good. Not only did she make Bian Han suffer, but his legs were also not completely cured. However, his legs were no longer swollen and pus was no longer flowing out. The high fever on his body had also subsided. No matter what, his life was saved. That was enough. Nothing else mattered. However, what followed was eldest Aunt Gus's calamity. She had become Gu Qiuyue's servant, and it was common for her to be beaten and scolded. Once Qiuyue was unsatisfied with her serving tea and water, Qiuyue would not give her food and she would kneel outside the courtyard to suffer the cold. Moreover, the indenture they signed back then was for 2 people. Bian Han could not work because of his leg injury. Hence, Qiuyue asked Gu Dafeng to do all his work. Otherwise she was not allowed to eat or sleep. During that period of time, Gu Dafeng was so busy that she did not have any time to rest. Because of this, Bian blamed himself very much. There were several times when he wanted to end his life so that he would not drag her down, but in the end he was saved by Gu Dafeng. If he died too, Gu Dafeng would feel that there was no point in living. At least her husband was by her side and she had someone to rely on. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 794. They did it for nothing. This torture lasted until their Zhou mansion planned to move his entire family to the Xuanhe prefecture. Gu Dafeng and her husband naturally came along. When they first arrived at Xuanhe prefecture, Qiuyue was still unwilling to let them off. However, not long after, Qiuyue suddenly stopped. Although she was still secretly humiliating them, she was no longer so brazen. Gu Dafeng found it strange. Later, she heard that it was because old master had brought Mrs. Zhou back. Mrs. Zhou was very dissatisfied with Zhou Dafu's concubine. Furthermore, she quarreled with Zhou Dafu and left the Zhou mansion to return to her maternal family in Yongning prefecture. Mrs. Zhou felt that Zhou Dafu was so unscrupulous because he saw that Yongning prefecture had suffered a disaster and felt that her maternal family had also suffered heavy losses and could not be her backer. He actually said in front of her that he wanted to take a widow who had given birth to a child as a concubine. In a fit of anger, she went home to find someone to support her. Fortunately, although her family had suffered some losses, not everyone could bully them. After her family recovered, they sent someone to settle scores with Zhou Dafu. Only then did Zhou Dafu bring his son to Yongning prefecture to fetch Mrs. Zhou. Gu Yundong could not help but think about it. The last time they had met Zhou Dafu and his son was on the way back from Yongning prefecture. Could it be that they had gone to fetch Mrs. Zhou? After Mrs. Zhou returned, in order to show his respect for her family, although Zhou Dafu did not chase Qiuyue away, he neglected her for a long time. During that period of time, Qiuyue shrunk like a quail and did not dare to cause trouble at all. She was even called to the front by Mrs. Zhou and mocked. She often stayed in Mrs. Zhou's courtyard to serve her and was tortured by Mrs. Zhou. Gu Dafeng and her husband finally had a chance to catch their breath and recuperate in the backyard. Even though Qiuyue did not let them have an easy time after suffering at Mrs. Zhou's side. However, with Mrs. Zhou in the Zhou mansion, she did not dare to be too obvious. However, not long after, Qiuyue mysteriously told them to stay in the backyard and not go anywhere. She also told them not to see anyone and even locked up their room. Even she rarely met them. Only Mrs. Ren interacted with them. Although Gu Dafeng found it strange, the two of them heaved a sigh of relief when Qiuyue stopped torturing them. However, Qiuyue often starved them and only gave them porridge a day to barely fill their stomachs. Gu Dafeng and her husband were locked up in the backyard like prisoners. However, the two still had hope. They still wanted to leave this place. Bian used to be a carpenter and knew how to carve gadgets. Gu Dafeng stayed in the backyard for a while and got someone to bring back some wood that others did not want, as well as 2 carving knives. Mrs. Ren did see it, but she saw that Bian's carving was quite good looking. Anyway, as long as they did not cause trouble, it was fine to carve some things. Mrs. Ren even took Father Bian's carvings to sell. Although the price was not high, she still earned some extra income. Because of this, Mrs. Ren turned a blind eye and even helped to persuade Qiuyue when she found out. That was why she didn't let Qiuyue take their things away. However, what Mrs. Ren did gave Gu Dafeng some inspiration. If she could sell them, could she do the same? Although they were said to be Gu Qiuyue's servants, they were different from ordinary servants. They did not have any monthly allowance. Gu Qiuyue said that she had already paid their monthly allowance for Bian's treatment in advance, so they had done the work for nothing. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 795. Fate is indescribably wonderful. Gu Dafeng needed money. She knew that no matter where she was, she could not do anything without money. For example, if she had money in the backyard of the Zhou mansion, she could at least find someone to bring them some food and not starve. Just like Mrs. Ren. Although she was Gu Qiuyue's confidant, she had her own interests and could still make things easier for them. Therefore, after Bian carved those gadgets again, Gu Dafeng would secretly hide some. The rest would be taken away by Mrs. Ren. In order to earn this extra income, Mrs. Ren even found wood for them. Anyway, it was just a small matter. Bian was her free labor. Bian Han's movements were fast and the carvings were beautiful. Gu Dafeng had actually already saved up a bag of money, but it was a pity that she could not leave the residence. Mrs. Rin was very strict in this aspect. The courtyard where Qiuyue lived was filled with her people, and the place where they lived was tightly guarded. Just as Gu Dafeng was feeling a little dejected, an opportunity suddenly came. The servant who watched over them today did not pay attention and left without locking the door completely. Gu Dafeng ran out secretly. She had also heard that old Master Zhou had left the residence to watch the parade. Not only him but Qiuyue had also gone out. Mrs. Rin was not around either. Moreover, the place they were going was relatively far from the Zhou mansion. It would probably be afternoon when they returned. Yundong thought of Steward Zhou, whom she had met in the tea house. She had not seen Steward Zhou come out of the main door since she went back. Now that she knew that Zhou Dafu had gone out, he must have gone out through the back door. Moreover, because she was here, he was afraid that it would be awkward if they bumped into each other, so he went further away to watch the commotion. What could she say? Was fate indescribably wonderful? So, eldest aunt took advantage of their absence to sell all the wooden carvings in this bag? Gu Dafeng nodded and looked at the bag beside her. She said in a low voice, "Unfortunately, none of them were sold. When everyone saw me like this, they thought I was a beggar. Before I could speak, they all had run away." Gu Dafeng's clothes were from her hometown. Qiuyue had never given them clothes to wear. She always said that they were doing rough work anyway. It would be a waste to give them good clothes. They did not have to go out, so there was nothing to worry about. Therefore, even though she had washed her clothes and tidied her hair, she was still avoided by pedestrians. The wooden carvings couldn't be sold, and someone accidentally pushed her in front of someone's carriage. At that moment, Gu Dafeng's heart was filled with despair. She had personally seen someone block a rich man's carriage and be beaten half to death. At that time, her limbs were weak and she could not stand up at all. Her mind was also blank. She only spoke numbly, but she did not even know what she had said. When she picked up the wooden carvings and was about to leave, a man grabbed her hand. She started to tremble, thinking that it was over. Unexpectedly, she met her eldest brother and niece. They stopped her because they recognized her voice. Gu Dafeng was overjoyed. She wished she could hug her eldest brother and cry on the spot. She wanted to cry out all the emotions she had suppressed for the past year. Finally, she didn't have to hold on like this anymore. She and her brother were reunited. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 796. I'll bring uncle back. Gu Dajiang's eyes turned red when he heard that. He held his sister's hand and said, "With me around in the future, you can be at ease. I won't let you suffer like this again." Then he gritted his teeth. "Qiuyue, this beast. Previously she lied to me that Yundong and the rest went to Wanqing Prefecture. Now she's using all means to torture your own sister and brother-in-law." He looked at Gu Yundong. "I'll go to the Zhou mansion and personally bring brother-in-law out. You take care of your aunt." Gu Dafeng quickly pulled him back. "Brother, don't be rash. The Zhou family is not an ordinary family. You'll suffer if you go." Gu Yundong also stopped him. "Father, don't go. I'll go to the Zhou mansion." "You can't go either. Yundong, you don't know." Gu Dafeng wanted to stop her. Gu Yundong shook her head. "It's all right, aunt. I know old Master Zhou." Eldest Aunt Gu was stunned. "You know old Master Zhou?" "That's right. Not only do we know each other, but we also have some ties. When my shop opened, he gave me a huge gift," Gu Yundong said meaningfully. "So don't worry. Even if Qiuyue doesn't agree to let you go, she is Zhou Dafu's concubine. As long as Zhou Dafu agrees, it's useless for her to object." Gu Dafeng was stunned. Yundong had opened a shop? Old Master Zhou had even sent a congratulatory gift? They actually knew each other? Gu Yundong said to Gu Dajiang, "Father, I've interacted more with old Master Zhou and know his personality. It's more suitable for me to ask him for her. You haven't met Zhou Dafu before. He doesn't know you. If he's unwilling to see you, you won't be able to ask for anything. Most importantly, if Qiuyue finds out, it'll be disadvantageous for us if she's on guard." Gu Dajiang frowned. Although he wanted to teach Qiuyue a lesson personally, what Yundong said made sense. Hence she nodded. "All right, nothing else is important. The most important thing is to bring your uncle out and get the indenture." "Yes, I know." Gu Yundong smiled. "Eldest aunt, rest well. I will reunite your family." Gu Dafeng was still very worried. Her niece was only 15 years old, and she used to be a timid girl who did not speak much. Zhou Dafu was a businessman. He had been in the business world for a long time and had a big estate. Such a person was an old fox. Although she had never interacted with Zhou Dafu, she knew that he was not a good person. Yundong was so beautiful, yet Zhou Dafu had taken a fancy to Qiuyue. What if he had designs on Yundong? Gu Daifeng's mind was in a mess, and her imagination was running wild. However, Gu Yundong had already stood up. She looked around and said to Gu Dajiang, "Father, this is a medical center after all. It's not convenient to stay here for long. Take eldest aunt to the inn beside and get a good room. Let eldest aunt rest and recuperate." Gu Dajiang thought about it and agreed. He helped Gu Dafeng stand up. On the other hand, Gu Dafeng shook her head. "Isn't it a waste of money? It's the same even if I wait outside." Gu Dajiang disagreed and insisted on bringing her to a nearby inn. Gu Yundong specially went to the ready-made clothing store and bought 2 sets of clothes. One was for eldest Aunt Gu and the other was for his uncle. Then she handed eldest Aunt Gu to her father and went out herself. She walked to the carriage and jumped up. Shui Rong, who was on the carriage shaft, asked, "Miss, where are we going? The Zhou residence? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 797. Finding help. Gu Yundong was also thinking about where to go. Of course, it was most important to go straight to the Zhou residence, but Zhou Dafu. After a few interactions, Gu Yundong finally knew what kind of person this person was. He was someone who would trample on you to death whenever he found an opportunity. Back then, when he wanted her shop, he didn't know much about her and Shao Qingyuan. He only knew that he couldn't beat them and ran away. In the end, after investigating them, he found out that the 2 of them were just poor people from the countryside who had no backing. He immediately wanted to destroy them on the day of the opening. Even if such a person saw that the people who came to deliver the congratulatory gifts were either rich or noble when the shop opened, and knew that she was not someone without a backer, once he knew that the family she cared about was in the Zhou mansion, he would be smug. Not only would he not let him go, but he would also take her aunt and uncle into his hands and obtain endless benefits from her. For example, getting in touch with the Nye family. If Qiuyue, the troublemaker, was included, Gu Yundong felt that she would be sucked dry by Zhou Dafu in the future. Therefore he could not look for her so directly. Gu Yundong sat in the carriage and did not speak. His mind was racing. After a while, she narrowed her eyes and said to Shui Rong, who was outside, "Go to the Dai residence." This place was not far from the government office, so the Dai residence was also nearby. Although Shui Rong did not know what Miss wanted to do, he immediately turned his horse around, shook the reins and quickly headed for the Dai residence. Gu Yundong had never been to the Dai residence before. Previously she had met Madame Dai at the milk tea shop. This was the first time she had visited. However, Madame Dai had told her that if she wanted to visit, she could just tell the concierge. She had instructed the concierge not to stop her. Thus, after Gu Yundong announced her identity, the concierge immediately led her inside. Madame Dai happened to be at home today. When she saw Gu Yundong enter, her face was filled with surprise. "Yundong, you're finally in the prefectural city. It seems that I sent the right letter to you. I should have urged you to come back earlier." Gu Yundong smiled and greeted her. Madame Dai held her hand and walked in. All right. There's no need to be so polite. You came at the right time. I have a lot to tell you. Come in quickly. I'll get someone to serve tea." Gu Yundong quickly pulled her back. "Annie, wait. I came here today for something." "Is something wrong?" "Yes, it's an urgent matter," Gu Yundong said solemnly. Seeing this, Madame Dai's expression turned solemn. "Do you think there's a problem with the shop?" "No, I have something else to ask. Young Master Dai for help." Gu Yundong looked around and whispered in her ear. "Wenhuo." Madame Dai was surprised. "Yes, is young Master Dai in the residence?" Yes. Madame Dai's heart was itching. She didn't know why Yundong was looking for Wenhuo. She knew that Wenhuo had gone to Yongfu village last time. When she returned home, she even specially asked him. Wenhuo simply said that Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan had helped him a lot. After that, she didn't say much. Madame Dai knew that there were some things that she shouldn't know too much about, so she didn't ask further. Could it be that Yundong was looking for Wenhuo today because of what happened back then? Why didn't young Master Shao come looking for him? Madame Dai thought a lot, but she knew her limits. Her husband and son were doing something big, so she shouldn't inquire what she shouldn't know. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 798. The Petty Dai Wenhuo. Hence, Madame Dai quickly asked the maidservant to look for Dai Wenhuo. What a coincidence. Wenhuo happened to be at home today. Today was the day that the bandits were going to be executed. There was indeed news that there might be accomplices coming to rescue the prisons, so Dai Wenhuo secretly deployed people to keep an eye on the few people who were to be executed. Unexpectedly, there was nothing unusual. The bandits did not come. Dai Wenhuo waited for the bandits to be beheaded before returning home. Just as he finished eating and changed his clothes, he heard his mother call him over. Dai Wenhuo quickly packed up and went to pay his respects to his mother. Then he saw Yundong standing there. He was stunned for a while before Madame Dai said, "Come quickly. Yundong is looking for you. She has something important to discuss." As she spoke, Madame Dai left, leaving Dai Wenhuo and Dai Zhong behind. Dai Zhong nodded. "Miss Gu." Gu Yundong nodded at him and walked to Dai Wenhuo. "I want to ask you for a favor." Dai Wenhuo dug his ears. "Who did you say you were asking for help?" "This guy. He must have hated her for not sharing the porridge with him when they were deep in the mountains. What a petty man. Please, Dai Wenhuo. Forget it, she was a magnanimous person. She would let him be smug for 2 days." Dai Wenhuo finally knew that this was a private matter. Since it was not serious, he was not in a hurry. He raised his eyebrows and asked again, "I didn't hear you clearly. Say it again." Dai Zhong, who was standing behind him, shouted in his heart. "Young master, where's your grace? Do you not want that brother of yours, young master Shao? Why are you making things difficult for Miss Gu like this? Moreover, Miss Gu will definitely take revenge in the future. It won't do you any good to act rashly." Gu Yundong secretly took a deep breath and put on a fake smile. "It's fine if you didn't hear me clearly. If your house wasn't close, I wouldn't have come to look for you. But it seems that I found the wrong person. After all, you're deaf. I'm afraid you can't help much. Goodbye." Her first choice was the steward of the Nye residence, all right? Zhou Dufu wanted to cozy up to the Nye residence, and it was said that he had treated the steward to several meals. However, the Nye residence was far away. Furthermore, she was not as familiar with the steward as she was with Dai Wenhuo. Unexpectedly, Dai Wenhuo was nothing. She turned around and was about to leave when Dai Wenhuo suddenly stood up from his chair. "Wait." He took 2 steps forward and stood in front of Gu Yundong. "Forget it. For Shao Qingyuan's sake, just tell me what it is. It'll help you. I don't want him to fight me to the death if you run to him and cry." He didn't say that he wouldn't help. This woman really didn't have any patience. He wasn't such an ungrateful person. Last time, it was her and Shao Qingyuan who brought him into the mountains and gave him such a big clue. Gu Yundong snorted coldly. She wanted to put on airs and let him know that there was a price to pay for his foul mouth. However, she couldn't wait any longer. Who knew if Qiuyue would find out about her eldest aunt's absence and settle the score with her eldest uncle? Thus, Gu Yundong did not delay any further and briefly explained the matter. Dai Wenhuo frowned when he heard that. After a while, he nodded and said, "All right, let's go to the Zhou residence. Find me a set of servant's clothes. I'll go with you. Zhou Dufu knows me. I'll dress up." Dai Wenhuo nodded and got someone to bring her a new set of clothes. Then he got Dai Zhong to prepare the carriage. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 799. To the Zhou mansion, disguised Gu Yundong borrowed Madame Dai's room and put on makeup for himself. Madame Dai watched from the side. Although she did not know what Gu Yundong was doing dressed up like this, she saw that Gu Yundong had skillfully turned an exquisite and gentle girl into a slightly delicate but tough man in a short period of time. She exclaimed as if she was watching a show. "As expected, I knew that the more I get to know you, the more capable you are. I really want to see what other abilities you have." Madame Dai was really envious of her hands. She felt that they could turn something rotten into something magical. Gu Yundong smiled. "He'll teach Andy when I'm free. That's a deal." "Okay." Gu Yundong bade her farewell and hurried out. As soon as she left, Madame Dai's gaze landed on the makeup items on her dressing table. She picked them up eagerly and gestured at her face. Gu Yundong had already walked out of the Dai residence. There were 2 carriages parked there. Dai Wenhuo stood beside one of them. Gu Yundong walked towards Shuirong. "Go back to the inn first." "Yes, miss." Gu Yundong nodded and turned to walk towards Dai Wenhuo. Dai Wenhuo did not recognize her at first. It was only when she was close that he widened his eyes and looked at the delicate servant. Gu Yundong had already lifted the curtain and went up. Hurry up. We're in a hurry. Dai Wenhuo coughed lightly and tried his best to hide the surprise on his face. She was indeed the best at drawing charcoal. He did not expect this skill to have such a magical effect on her face. Gu Yundong looked straight ahead, but she knew that Dai Wenhuo would occasionally turn to look at her. If she knew what Dai Wenhuo was thinking, she would probably vomit blood. How could everything be related to painting? Gu Yundong had something on her mind and was not in the mood to chat, so she was very silent along the way. In silence, the carriage arrived at the entrance of the Zhou mansion. Dai Wenhuo's carriage had the symbol of the Dai family. The gatekeeper of the Zhou family had long been instructed by the master to remember all the famous families in the prefectural city. At this moment, when he saw the prefecture magistrate Dai's carriage, his eyes immediately widened. He hurriedly pushed another person beside him to the side. Quickly report to the master that someone from the Dai residence is here. That person staggered and did not say anything else. He immediately got up and staggered inside. Old master. Gu Yundong alighted from the carriage and turned to wait respectfully for Dai Wenhuo to alight. Dai Wenhuo jumped down and looked up at the Zhou residence in front of him. He said in a low voice, "This is Zhou Dafa's house?" "Yes." As he spoke, the gatekeeper had already greeted him with a flattering smile. "May I ask if the esteemed guest is young Master Dai?" "Yes, I'm looking for your master." The gatekeeper hurriedly said, "I've already sent someone to report. Young Master Dai, please wait a moment." In less than 10 seconds, Zhou Dafu had already rushed out of the door. "Young Master Dai, please forgive me for not coming out to welcome you." Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and lowered her head. Dai Wenhuo glanced at her without batting an eyelid and walked up. "I hope old Master Zhou won't take offense at my unannounced visit." "You're welcome. Please come in, young Master Dai." Dai Wenhuo led Gu Yundong and Dai Xiong inside, led by Zhou Dafu. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 800. Someone's secret help. At the same time, in the Zhou mansion's tranquil orchid courtyard, a nanny was talking to Mrs. Zhou. "According to Madame's instructions, we bribed the servants of the snow-blowing garden and opened the door for the couple. That Gu wife did indeed leave with a bag. However, she was only going to sell wooden carvings. I thought that we would not gain anything today. I didn't expect that the Gu wife would bump into a carriage on her way back. The people in the carriage came down and met her. Oh my, that's amazing." Mrs. Zhou immediately straightened her back. "What happened?" The nanny laughed. "A man came out of the carriage and actually called the Gu wife sister." Mrs. Zhou's eyes widened. "Really?" "Yes, I heard it clearly." The nanny did not expect such a gain. She had been keeping an eye on the garden for some time. Concubine Gu had not been with master for a long time and did not have much power. However, Mrs. Ren had taken her side, and Mrs. Ren was not on good terms with Mrs. Zhou, so she had been helping Concubine Gu. Mrs. Ren was a person who liked to hold grudges. In the past, she had served the old madam. Before the old madam died, she asked the old master to take care of Mrs. Ren. Therefore, even if Mrs. Zhou wanted to deal with her, she had to consider carefully and tactfully. However, when master took Concubine Gu in, Mrs. Zhou went back to her mother's family in a fit of pique, giving Mrs. Ren time to get together with Concubine Gu and arrange for her former friends to join the snow-blowing garden. That was why it was so difficult for her to find out what was going on in the garden, and Concubine Gu had not come out of the garden a while ago. But she had heard from a servant that Concubine Gu was locked up with a couple. She had no idea what their relationship was, but she heard that the man's legs were broken and his surname was Bian, and the woman's surname was Gu, which was the same as Concubine Gus. Mrs. Zhou and her servant both guessed that Concubine Gu might be from the same hometown and had a grudge against her. Otherwise, why would Concubine Gu torture her so much? Mrs. Zhou saw that she had kept the two of them locked up and refused to let them out, so she would try to set the Gu woman. It was because she opened the door that Gu Dafeng was able to leave the Zhou mansion unhindered and reach the streets. The nanny followed behind her quietly and saw Gu Dajiang reuniting with her. After Mrs. Zhou heard this, she tapped her fingers on the table and frowned. "Don't you know who's in the carriage?" "I don't know about that," the nanny said shamefully. "I originally wanted to ask around, but unfortunately, that man booked a room in the inn next door. His daughter left in a carriage." The carriage moved too quickly so I couldn't follow. He got a room in the inn? In that case he's not from the Xuanhe prefecture? The nanny thought for a moment and nodded slightly. I'm afraid so. Mrs. Zhou sighed. So you are saying that the brother of the Gu family doesn't dare to seek revenge from the Zhou family and concubine Gu? The nanny was also a little disappointed. Logically speaking, they had acknowledged the Gu family, but that man with the surname Bian was still in the residence. If they were worried that he would suffer, they should have come to the Zhou mansion as soon as possible to ask for him. However, the brother of the Gu family was accompanying the Gu family at the inn. The daughter rode the carriage away and did not come to the Zhou mansion. The two of them were disappointed. At this moment, a servant came to report, "Madam, the young master of the prefecture magistrate Deus family is here. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 801. Old Master Zhou, please give him to me. Mrs. Zhou instantly came back to her senses and temporarily put aside the matter of the Gu family. She asked in surprise, "The young master of the prefecture magistrate Deus family? When did we have a relationship with the Dai family?" The servant shook his head. "I don't know. Master seems to be quite puzzled too." Mrs. Zhou thought for a moment. "Go to the front yard and wait. Listen to what's going on. I hope he's not here for trouble," she said the last sentence in an extremely low voice. As she finished speaking, she began to feel uneasy. The servant hurriedly ran out. At this moment, Zhou Dafu was also feeling uneasy. After asking Dai Wenhuo to take a seat, he asked tentatively, "May I know why young Master Dai is here today?" "There's nothing special. I just want to ask if old Master Zhou can give me 2 servants, Dai Wenhuo said with a smile. Zhou Dafu heaved a sigh of relief and asked curiously, "Who is young Master Dai talking about?" Dai Wenhuo took out 2 wooden carvings and said, "When I went on the streets today, I saw a woman holding a wooden carving. I liked it very much and wanted to buy a few more from her. Unexpectedly, the woman said that she was a servant of the Zhou mansion. This wooden carving was carved by her husband, so she couldn't sell it to me." Zhou Dafu was surprised. There was a servant in his residence who knew how to sculpt? He did not know that. He picked up the wooden carving that Dai Wenhuo had placed on the table and took a closer look. It was indeed quite exquisite, but there was still a gap between it and the works of those real old craftsmen. It was rare for Dai Wenhuo to like it. However, Dai Wenhuo did not seem to see the doubt in his eyes. He sighed faintly and said as if he was recalling, "I really like this wooden carving. I'm not afraid of old Master Zhou laughing at me. I learned it myself when I was young, but I wasn't good at it, so I put it down. Now that I see this wooden carving, I actually think of those things when I was young. I suddenly feel a little emotional, so I want to pick it up again and learn it. I can kill time in my spare time. Coincidentally, I met this sculptor who suits me, so on impulse I came to ask old Master Zhou to give them to me." Zhou Dafu was stunned. So that was the case. His mind began to work quickly. He had no interaction with Dai Wenhuo at all. Usually, it was harder than ascending to the heavens to climb up the Dai residence. This was a rare opportunity. Dai Wenhuo only wanted 2 servants. Not to mention the servants that he had no impression of and were worthless. He would not have any objections even if Dai Wenhuo wanted the servant beside him. Moreover, using these 2 servants to establish a relationship with Dai Wenhuo would be very beneficial to him in the future. Seeing that he was silent, Dai Wenhuo smiled and said, "Of course it's fine if old Master Zhou can't bear to part with them. I'm just saying." Zhou Dafu was shocked and hurriedly said with a smile, "Young Master Dai, you must be joking. They're just 2 servants. How can I be reluctant to let them go? I'm a boor and don't understand these elegant things. This sculptor will be wasting his talent if he's with me. Only by following young Master Dai will he have a chance to be useful. I can't ask for more." Dai Wenhuo had already come personally. If he didn't give the servants to him, he would be ungrateful. Old Master Zhou is indeed a reasonable person. Dai Wenhuo took out 50 taels of silver from his sleeve and slowly pushed it over the table. "This is the silver to buy them. I hope old Master Zhou will accept it. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 802. Oh no, he's going to inform them. Zhou Dafu hurriedly waved his hand. "I can't accept the money. They're just 2 servants. They'll just give them to young Master Dai." "That won't do," Dai Wenhuo said meaningfully. If that's the case, it'll be criticized if word gets out. I don't want to be criticized behind my back for 2 servants. Zhou Dufu suddenly came back to his senses and thought of the prefecture magistrate Deus' identity. Indeed, giving gifts was one thing, but it couldn't be done openly. What if someone targeted the prefecture magistrate and reported him to the emperor? Wouldn't it mean that he had done something bad out of good intentions? Not only did he not let young Master Dai owe him a favor, but he also made people hate him? At the thought of this, Zhou Dufu shuddered on the spot and said with a serious expression, "Young Master Dai makes sense. We're doing a normal transaction." "That's right. It's better to write it clearly in a contract." Without another word, Zhou Dufu asked the butler to bring a pen and paper over. He wrote down the contract that Bian Han and Gu Dafeng had been sold to Dai Wenhuo, signed it, and gave each of them a copy. Dai Wenhuo put away his copy in satisfaction, and a glint flashed across his slightly lowered eyes. "That's right. It was a normal transaction and the silver had been paid. In the future, don't ask me for favors just because you have given me 2 servants. I wouldn't admit it." Zhou Dufu had misunderstood and did not realize that he had fallen into Dai Wenhuo's trap. He invited Dai Wenhuo to drink tea, then asked someone to bring the servant with the surname Bian. The servant turned around to go, but he was stopped by Steward Zhou halfway. "He'll go." The person sent by Mrs. Zhou happened to see it. He immediately ran back to the tranquil orchid courtyard and panted as he recounted the matter. When Mrs. Zhou heard that Dai Wenhuo was here to ask for the servants, she was stunned. Could it be that the brother that the Gu woman met was related to the prefecture magistrate's family? He didn't come before because he went to ask the young master for help? "Oh no, madam, Steward Zhou is on good terms with Mrs. Ren. I'm afraid he went to inform her, right?" The nanny suddenly exclaimed. Mrs. Zhou could not sit still anymore. "Let's go to the front yard to take a look. Nanny, bring someone to the snow-blowing garden personally to bring her out. If Mrs. Ren stops you, say that it's old master's orders. If she delays you, we'll teach her a lesson." "Yes, ma'am." "Bring a few more people." The nanny immediately ordered a few servants in the courtyard to leave with her. Mrs. Zhou tidied her clothes and led the 2 maidservants to the front courtyard. At this moment, Gu Yundong also saw Steward Zhou, who had stopped the servants and personally went to look for the servants. A bad feeling flashed across her heart. She whispered to Dai Wenhuo, "He'll go to the toilet." Dai Wenhuo knew that she must have something to do and immediately scolded, "I told you to drink less water before leaving. Come back quickly." Zhou Dufu saw that although Dai Wenhuo was dissatisfied, he did not seem angry at all. He knew that Dai Wenhuo definitely liked this servant. Hence, he quickly said, "He'll get the servant to bring this young man over." Gu Yundong said in a rough voice, "No need, no need. We'll just go out and ask." Then she looked like she couldn't hold it in anymore and ran away. Zhou Dufu frowned slightly and hurriedly gave the butler a look. This was his residence. Although the other party was brought over by young Master Dai, the servant could not walk around casually. His study had many secrets. The butler hurried to catch up, but Gu Yundong ran very fast. How could the butler catch up? Chapter 803. Oh no, the butler was a little angry that he had lost the stranger. If he told Zhou Dufu now, he would definitely make Dai Wenhuo unhappy. Therefore, he could only make the people guarding the study and the warehouse more vigilant and strict. However, Gu Yundong did not go to those places at all. She moved very quickly and soon caught up with Steward Zhou, who was walking towards the snow-blowing garden. Steward Zhou quickly entered the courtyard, but there were 2 old women guarding the entrance. Gu Yundong was just thinking about how to put the 2 of them down when she heard hurried footsteps behind him. She quickly hid behind a big tree at the side and watched helplessly as 4 burly old women followed a nanny and quickly walked towards the snow-blowing garden. The nanny in the lead instructed the old woman behind her with a serious expression. "Keep a close eye on Mrs. Ren later. That person is the most ruffian. You must not let her go over and hide that servant with the surname Bian. Do you hear me?" "Got it." Gu Yundong narrowed his eyes. "Mrs. Ren? Who were these people? They looked fierce as if they were here to cause trouble." The next moment, Gu Yundong confirmed her guess. These people were indeed here to cause trouble. As soon as they reached the entrance of the courtyard, they were stopped by the old woman guarding the door. "What are you doing? This is the snow-blowing garden. You're not allowed to be impudent." The leading nanny did not stop walking at all. She said to the old woman behind her, "Shut their mouths and drag them to the side." "Yes." Then 2 old women walked out and pounced on the 2 guards. The 2 of them instantly shouted, "Nanny Su, how dare you? Aren't you afraid that old master will argue with madam if he finds out? Nanny Su sneered. We're here on master's orders to look for someone. After saying that, she entered without looking back. The old woman guarding the door wanted to say something, but her mouth was blocked and she could not make a sound at all. Then she was dragged away. Yundong understood that the people who came later were Mrs. Zhou's people. It seemed like Mrs. Zhou knew that Qiuyue was up to no good, so she took precautions in advance. It just so happened that she had helped Yundong. Without the old woman guarding the door, Yundong could easily enter again. She followed Nanny Su inside and saw Qiuyue, whom she thought was dead, sitting in the central room. She was wearing gold and silver, and her face was rosy and her figure was curled up. Her life was not ordinary. Steward Zhou was standing in front of Qiuyue. Steward Zhou bowed slightly as if he was reporting to her. However, Qiuyue had a relaxed expression on her face. She wasn't in a hurry even when Nanny Su barged in. She just chuckled. Steward Zhou, what are you talking about? A man with the surname Bian? I don't have such a person. You're making things difficult for me. You can't possibly make me create one for you, right? Also, Nanny Su, what do you mean by bringing so many people into my courtyard with great fanfare? I'm master's concubine after all. You're disrespectful and don't take master seriously at all. This pretentious look made Yundong feel nauseous. But very quickly she narrowed her eyes and scanned the room. Other than Qiuyue and a few younger maidservants, she did not look like Mrs. Ren at all. Yundong's expression changed slightly. Oh no. Chapter 804. Yundong makes a move, retracting her gaze from Qiuyue's face. Yundong immediately turned around and ran to the left. Her movements were a little loud, causing the few old women standing behind Nanny Su to turn around. Unfortunately, before they could take a closer look, she had already disappeared. Yundong ran very fast. Eldest Aunt Gu had already told her about the layout of the entire snow-blowing garden before she came. She also knew where the room they were locked in was. Thus, Yundong recalled for a moment before heading straight to her destination. As expected, when she ran to the door of the second room in the small courtyard at the back, she saw a woman about the same age as Nanny Su hurriedly opening the lock of a room with two maidservants. Then the two maidservants pushed open the door and entered. Mrs. Rin stood at the door to keep watch. Yundong heaved a sigh of relief. There was still time. She suddenly rushed forward. Mrs. Rin felt as if there was a gust of wind behind her. Just as she was about to turn around, she was hit hard on the shoulder. Before she could see who was behind her, her eyes rolled back and she fainted on the ground. Seeing this, Yundong immediately screamed, "Ah, Mrs. Ren." The two maidservants in the room who were about to carry Bian out were shocked when they heard this. They hurriedly left him behind and ran out. Then they saw the person lying on the ground. The two of them were shocked and lost for a moment. They quickly squatted down and called her, Mrs. Ren, what's wrong? Wake up." Yundong hid in a corner and was wondering if she should knock out the two maidservants when Nanny Su had already arrived with her people. She probably heard Yundong scream and ran over. She took the lead and walked the fastest. Steward Zhou cursed in his heart and followed them. On the other hand, Qiuyue was stumbling at the back because her clothes were too cumbersome. Seeing that they were here, Yundong decided to hide and observe the situation. Steward Zhou's expression changed when he saw Mrs. Ren lying on the ground. He asked, "What happened?" The two maidservants were dumbfounded and replied in fear, "Mrs. Ren fainted." Why did she faint out of nowhere? Nanny Su sneered. She probably fainted because she felt guilty after doing too many bad things and was too nervous. Then she took the lead and walked towards the room in front of her. She asked Bian, "Is your surname Bian?" Bian's mind was still in a mess. He had been a little worried since Gu Dafeng left in the morning, but he could not move his legs and could only wait. However, who knew that the person who had originally said that she would be back at noon had not been around for 4 hours. Just as Bian was feeling worried, Mrs. Ren's voice came from outside the door. Immediately after, the door was opened and two maidservants came over to carry him away. Bian felt as if his brain was about to explode. There was only one thought in his mind: the matter of Dafeng sneaking out of the mansion had been discovered. However, before he could finish this thought, the two maidservants threw away their hands and ran out. Immediately after, a large group of people barged into the house. Nanny Su was a little disgusted. After all, Qiuyue was the one who used this room to lock people up. In addition, Bian was an injured person, so the smell in the room was a little unpleasant. She waved her hand and let the two old women carry Bian out. Then she walked out of the door first. However, just as she was about to leave with Bian Han, Qiuyue stopped her with a furious look on her face. Chapter 805. She was here to hammer Concubine Gu to death. Nanny Su, what do you mean? This is my snow-blowing garden. How can a be *tch like you come and take people as you please? Qiuyue was furious. When she heard Steward Zhou say that someone had come to look for the servant with the surname Bian in her courtyard, she and Mrs. Ren immediately thought of Bian Han. Mrs. Ren immediately wanted to secretly take him away. Who knew that she was still a step too late? What was even more hateful was that Gu Dafeng was not in the house. She must have run out to cause trouble. She had really underestimated her. Nanny Su saw the man she needed. Since he was not secretly taken away beforehand, she was not in a hurry. She laughed and looked at Steward Zhou beside her. Steward Zhou, I didn't want to come in and take him away casually. Tell me, did old master ask you to come and bring this servant with the surname Bian out? Our madam saw that Steward Zhou came alone and heard that this person's legs were inconvenient, so she asked me to bring someone to help. Why, Steward Zhou, don't you appreciate it? Steward Zhou laughed dryly. Now that things had come to this, he couldn't openly side with Qiuyue. He could only nod and say, that's indeed the case. This matter was indeed ordered by old master. Qiuyue glared at him. You, Steward Zhou gave her a look indicating that there was no room for negotiation. Yundong watched from afar. Why did she feel that the two of them had a tacit understanding? Nanny Su laughed. Since Steward Zhou has confirmed it, Concubine Gu, please don't block the way. The master is still waiting for you. If you neglect your esteemed guest, your position as a concubine will come to an end. Qiuyue gritted her teeth and could only let Nanny Su leave. However, before she left, she looked at Bian Han with a warning gaze. Bian Han did not notice it at all. He was confused and could only vaguely hear that old master wanted to see him. Nanny Su left with her people, her head held high. Sigh, without Mrs. Ren's pestering, she felt refreshed. Things went especially smoothly. She did not know how Mrs. Ren fainted, but it was really at the right time. Yundong smiled. She knew that Qiuyue could no longer stop them, so she quietly returned to the front hall. After she stood behind Wenhuo again, Wenhuo glanced at her. Yundong pursed her lips and smiled slightly. Yundong noticed a woman sitting beside him. Judging from her attire, she should be Mrs. Zhou. However, Zhou Dafu didn't look too good. He was obviously very unhappy that Mrs. Zhou had come. That was true. There were no females for her to entertain. If she ran to the male guest so casually, Zhou Dafu felt that it would leave a bad impression on young Master Dai, who would feel that the merchant family was indeed unruly. But Mrs. Zhou was here to deal a blow to Concubine Gu, and she had to come. Hence, she pretended not to see Zhou Dafu's warning gaze. Anyway, he wouldn't scold her away in front of Wenhuo, so she just lowered her head and waited quietly. After a while, there was a commotion outside. Zhou Dafu said to Wenhuo, he must have been brought here. As soon as he finished speaking, Steward Zhou entered and reported, Master, Bian Han has been carried over. Zhou Dafu was stunned. Carried over? Before he could figure it out, Nanny Su and the others walked in valiantly. However, at this moment, an even faster figure flew past the crowd and pounced into Zhou Dafu's arms. She cried loudly, Master, you have to stand up for me. Chapter 806. Young Master Dai can just take him away. Yundong smirked. Mrs. Zhou also smiled. Wenhuo also hooked his lips. Only Zhou Dafu's face was ashen. He pushed the person out and shouted angrily, What are you doing? There are esteemed guests here. Who asked you to be so unruly? Qiuyue was stunned. She felt extremely wronged, but she could still see clearly that there were many people standing in the hall. Mrs. Zhou was also there. At this moment she was looking at her in a good mood. However, the disdain in her eyes was obvious, as if she was saying that a village woman was a village woman. Vulgar and stupid. Qiuyue felt extremely nauseous. Without Mrs. Ren by her side, she was at a loss and forgot that Steward Zhou had mentioned that there were guests at home. The man sitting on the other side should be the esteemed guest that Zhou Dafu mentioned, right? Qiuyue didn't dare to look at him at all. This person had a strong aura. He just sat there calmly and seemed to be even more terrifying than Zhou Dafu, who was standing. Qiuyue didn't dare to be presumptuous anymore. After apologizing, she stood at the side. Zhou Dafu glared at her before taking a deep breath and looking at Bian Han. The next moment, he frowned fiercely and took 2 steps forward. What's wrong with your legs? Bian Han was placed on the ground. After being tortured like this, his legs vaguely hurt, but he gritted his teeth and endured it. "Master, my legs are broken." Yundong could tell and frowned slightly. However, Wenhuo said, "Since his legs are injured, why isn't there a stretcher to carry him? This is too much." Zhou hurriedly nodded. "I was inconsiderate. Steward Zhou, why aren't you finding a stretcher?" "Yes, my lord." Even Steward Zhou had left. Qiuyue was instantly isolated and helpless. She started to panic. Zhou glanced at Bian Han and frowned. Which courtyard did this Bian Han come from? Why was he so sloppy? He didn't even have any good clothes. Although he was wearing clean clothes, they were too tattered. Coupled with his crippled legs, he looked like a beggar on the street. No, even a beggar was better than him. Could this young Master Dai have misunderstood that their servants were not living well? No, after young Master Dai left, he had to figure out who was in charge of this Bian guy. He was actually in charge of him to this extent. He was simply neglecting his duty and embarrassing him. Zhou secretly took a deep breath and turned to Wenhuo with a smile. "He's here. Young Master Dai, see if it's him. If it's him, he'll get someone to change his clothes. Young Master Dai, you can just take him away." Qiuyue's expression changed. "Take him away? Let this young master take Bian Han away? How could he do that? No way." Initially, she thought that Mrs. Zhou had only complained to Old Master and treated Gu Dafeng and her husband as tools to deal with her. It turned out that she did not. Instead, she had given them to young Master Dai. Wenhuo had already learned from Gu Yundong that this person was the person they were looking for. He immediately said to Zhou, "It's him. There's no need to change his clothes. Anyway, he'll distribute new clothes to him when I bring him back to the residence. Old Master Zhou, please give me the indenture." Of course. Zhou nodded. He turned to look for Steward Zhou and realized that he had sent him to find a stretcher. Hence, she could only look at Nanny Su, who had brought the man in. Chapter 807. He's a servant of Concubine Gus Courtyard. Zhou thought that since he was brought in by Nanny Su, this servant must be from Madame's courtyard. He was immediately a little dissatisfied. He glared at Nanny Su and said, "Aren't you going to bring the indenture over?" Nanny Su darted a look at Qiuyue and answered respectfully and confidently, "Master, this woman belongs to Concubine Gus' yard, and you have to ask Concubine Gu for the indenture. I can't just barge into Concubine Gus' yard lest I break the rules." Zhou was stunned and turned to look at Qiuyue. "Your courtyard?" Qiuyue bit her lips, feeling a little indignant. However, she still nodded slightly. Zhou frowned even more. Qiuyue had always given him the impression that she was gentle and kind. Although she would occasionally behave inappropriately, she had lived in the countryside in the past and had never learned the rules. He was still tolerant. But now, this beggar-like servant in front of them was actually from her courtyard? How was this possible? He felt a little awkward, but with Wenhuo around he could only suppress these emotions. He said to Qiuyue in a low voice, "Since he's a servant in your courtyard, why don't you take out the indenture?" Mrs. Zhou also smiled and said, "That's right, Sister Gu, quickly take out the indenture. Old Master has already discussed it with young Master Dai. Now that this servant has been sold to young Master Dai, you don't want Old Master to go back on his word, right?" As expected, Zhou's expression instantly darkened. "Aren't you going?" Qiuyue could only leave the front hall unwillingly. She ran back to call Mrs. Ren, but the other party still did not wake up. She could only return to the front hall with the indenture. At this moment, Steward Zhou had already ordered someone to bring a stretcher over. Gu Yundong and Xiong personally helped Bian Han onto the stretcher. They only let go when he was comfortable. After that, they were just waiting for Qiuyue's indenture. Seeing that she was slow, Zhou became even more displeased. "You're so slow. You're not up to standard." Mrs. Zhou immediately covered her mouth and laughed silently. Qiuyue's face turned red and her fingers trembled slightly. She suddenly raised her head and didn't hand over the indenture in her hand. She only said to Zhou, "Master, these are my people after all. Why didn't you ask me when you sold them to others?" Zhou's expression changed drastically. He was actually questioned by a concubine in front of Wenhuo? Mrs. Zhou even covered her mouth with a handkerchief and laughed silently. Now, Old Master would know how embarrassing it was for him to take in a country woman who did not know the rules, right? He deserved it. Zhou cared about his reputation. How could he tolerate Qiuyue's provocation? "Even if I sell you, I don't need to ask you." Qiuyue gasped and her body swayed. What was the meaning of this? She was about to lose her balance, and the indenture in her hand was snatched by Zhou Dafu. Mrs. Ren, who had finally been woken up by various methods, rushed in. Master, I have something to say. Zhou Dafu was very irritable. He had sold 2 servants, but all of them dared to come out and provoke him. Who was the master of this house? However, Mrs. Ren was someone by his deceased mother's side. His mother valued Mrs. Ren very much. Before she died, she even instructed him not to disappoint her. For the sake of the old madam, Zhou Dafu said with a dark expression, "Speak." Chapter 808. Uncle, Yundong. Mrs. Ren glanced at Bian and said, "Actually, this Bian and his wife are different from ordinary servants." She specially mentioned Gu Dafeng and gave Bian a subtle warning. She continued, "They had sold themselves. Bian legs were badly injured and he had no money to treat them. Concubine Gu happened to run into him, so she was kind enough to give them money to treat his legs. Unfortunately, Bian legs were so badly injured that even the doctor could not do anything about it. Although his legs could not be treated, the Bian couple still thanked Aunt. Besides, they were penniless and had nowhere to go, so they wanted to sell themselves to repay Aunt." Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. "Not bad. You're quite good at making up stories." The more Mrs. Ren spoke, the more convinced she became. "I am a kind-hearted woman, so I agreed. But Concubine Gu also said that she would not sell them out. If someone wants to sell them out one day, she has to agree first." Qiuyue heaved a sigh of relief. Indeed, with Mrs. Ren by her side, she had nothing to be afraid of. Hence, she immediately nodded in agreement and tears welled up in her eyes. "That's right. Does Master want me to be the person who goes back on his word?" "This?" Zhou Dafu instantly frowned. He looked at Wenhuo, who said with a smile, "Actually, Mr. Zhou, you don't have to be so embarrassed. Since Concubine Gu said so, you can ask Bian directly. If he is willing, I can take him away." Zhou Dafu looked at Bian. "What do you think?" Mrs. Ren said, "Bian, you have to think about it clearly. I think you still have to discuss this with your wife. Otherwise, this couple will be separated." Bian could tell and his face turned pale. Gu Yundong could tell that she was threatening Bian with his wife. Unfortunately, Mrs. Ren and Qiuyue did not know that Wenhuo wanted to buy 2 people this time. Previously, when Steward Zhou went to inform Qiuyue because time was tight, he did not have time to explain the cause and effect. He probably only said that someone wanted to buy Bian and did not even have time to explain the reason before going in. Later on, in the front hall, they talked about indentures a few times, but they didn't mention that there were 2. Hence, Qiuyue and Mrs. Ren thought that Wenhuo only liked Bian and wanted to take him away. Even Bian himself thought so. Hence, Mrs. Ren's threat was very effective. Bian would not leave eldest aunt Gu here alone to be tortured by Qiuyue. He was about to answer when Gu Yundong suddenly tugged at his sleeve. Gu Yundong was squatting in front of the stretcher in front of him. His back was facing Zhou Dafu and the others, and there was still some distance between them. Hence, she lowered her voice and said softly, "Uncle, Yundong. Don't look at me first." Bian was stunned. "Yundong?" He subconsciously followed Yundong's instructions. Then Gu Yundong's voice rang in his ears again. "Don't worry. I've already met eldest aunt. She's with my father now. Just say that you want to leave with young Master Dai." A hint of joy flashed across Bian's eyes. He could finally put down his worries and fears. It turned out that Dafeng was fine and had even met her brother? That was good. Bian felt relieved. When he looked at Zhou Dafu again, he was no longer afraid. He spoke slowly, but he was exceptionally firm. "I'm willing to go with this young Master Dai." Chapter 809. He wants 2 servants, what? The smugness on Qiuyue and Mrs. Ren's faces disappeared. They looked at Bian in disbelief. Qiuyue almost blurted out and asked him if he didn't plan to care about Gu Dafeng anymore. Fortunately, Mrs. Ren was quick to stop her. Zhou Dafu heaved a sigh of relief. Thankfully, he didn't break his promise in front of Wenhuo. He asked Qiuyue for the indenture. The latter was still in a daze. It was Mrs. Ren who took the indenture from her and handed it to Zhou Dafu. However, Zhou Dafu frowned as he looked at the indenture in his hand. "Why is there only one?" Qiuyue came back to her senses. This is Bian's. It's a slave contract." "What about his wife?" A bad feeling flashed across Mrs. Ren's eyes. She asked uncertainly, "Master, do you mean that you want the indenture of the Gu woman?" Mrs. Zhou watched the drama and finally smiled. Sister Gu, I'm afraid you don't know that the people young Master Dai wanted from the beginning were this Bian couple. Gu Qiuyue's face turned pale. How can it be? Mrs. Zhou continued, young Master Dai has a good taste. He accidentally saw this wooden carving and knew that it was carved by Bian Han in our residence. Look, he was chatting happily with Old Master. Old Master sold the two of them to young Master Dai. At this moment Mrs. Ren's face turned pale. Wooden carving, wooden carving? Could it be those wooden carvings that she secretly took out? Damn it, she shouldn't have been greedy. Zhou Dafu had completely lost his patience. Mrs. Ren, go back and bring the other indenture over. Seriously, you're so dilly-dallying. You're not straightforward at all. Mrs. Ren answered in a daze and quickly went out. It was not until she reached the snow-blowing garden that she slowly let out a breath. Forget it, these two were servants at the Dai mansion. They were still slaves, but Concubine Gu could not vent her anger. However, Madame had been keeping a close eye on them recently. The two of them had only been locked up in the backyard for nothing. Actually, what Mrs. Ren meant was that it was good to sell them as soon as possible, lest Madame found out about their relationship with Aunt one day and used them as tools to attack. Mrs. Ren thought that Concubine Gu should not have brought these two people into the mansion to vent her anger, so she decided to sell them now. At the thought of this, Mrs. Ren sped up and hurried to the front hall with the indentures. Zhou Dafu handed both indentures to Dai Wenhuo. Dai Wenhuo had been here for a long time. Now that he was done, he bade farewell to Zhou Dafu. Zhou Dafu wanted to keep him for dinner, but Dai Wenhuo refused. Zhou Dafu could only walk him out regretfully while Gu Yundong and Dai Zhong carried Bian Han into the carriage. Bian Han, when you go to the Dai residence in the future, serve young Master Dai well. Be careful and don't lose him. Before Zhou Dafu could finish speaking, Gu Yundong pulled down the curtain and blocked his view. Zhou Dafu rubbed his nose. Alright, maybe the man didn't like people who had already been sold being educated by their old masters. He cupped his hands at Dai Wenhuo and watched as the carriage turned away. However, just as he was about to leave, the curtain beside the carriage was lifted, revealing Bian Han's thin face. He looked straight at the person standing behind Zhou Dafu and said calmly, Gu Qiuyue. Chapter 8:10, Bian Han is her brother-in-law? Wait, Gu Qiuyue? Zhou Dafu and the others looked at Gu Qiuyue. Even if this Bian guy was bought by someone else, he was still a servant. How dare he call Gu Qiuyue by her name? Gu Qiuyue raised her eyebrows and heard Bian Han continue, I know that the doctor who treated my legs previously was instructed by you to deliberately not heal my legs. You wanted to see us suffer. But you're my sister-in-law after all, my wife's biological sister. Furthermore, you cured my fever and let me live. We're still grateful to you. After this farewell, your sisterhood with Dafeng will be severed. From now on we'll go our separate ways. It's good to be strangers when we meet again. Even if we're on the verge of death and lose our limbs, we definitely won't ask you to save us again. After all, I don't want to see Dafeng tortured by you until she begs for death several times. Let's not meet again. With that, he lowered the curtain and the carriage slowly walked forward, leaving the people of the Zhou mansion standing at the door as if they had been struck by lightning. Their bodies were stiff and they could not come back to their senses. Gu Qiuyue was probably the only one who was trembling slightly and screaming in her heart that it was over. Zhou Dafu slowly turned around and looked at her with an unfamiliar gaze. After a long time he asked with a dry throat, The man called you sister-in-law? He's your brother-in-law? The Gu woman is your sister? Yes, the Gu family. Your surname is Gu. Zhou Dafu suddenly stepped forward and grabbed her wrist. Is what he said true? Are they your sister and brother-in-law? Not only did you get someone to deliberately not treat his legs, but you also made them become your servants and tortured them in all kinds of ways? Is that right? Gu Qiuyue couldn't say a word, but Mrs. Zhou was overjoyed. The heavens really opened their eyes. A person who could even treat her sister and brother-in-law so ruthlessly deserved retribution. The voices behind them became noisy, but Gu Yundong, who was in the carriage, smiled slightly. Bian Han exhaled slowly and asked her, Was I right just now? Gu Yundong raised his brows. That's right, but uncle, was it really Gu Qiuyue who deliberately did not treat your legs back then? Bian Han looked at his useless legs and smiled bitterly. He nodded. At first I didn't know either. I thought that my leg injury was really too serious and couldn't be treated. Later on I accidentally heard that this was Gu Qiuyue's order. Gu Yundong also looked at his leg. Uncle, you don't have to worry. Let's find another doctor to take a look. If it can be treated, well treat it. If it can't be treated, we can buy you a wheelchair for you to go out. You have skills. Those wooden carvings are very beautiful. Life is not a problem at all. Bian Han couldn't help but laugh when he heard that. Yundong, you don't have to comfort me. It's been more than a year since my legs became like this. Those bad thoughts have long passed. I won't take things too hard anymore. The most difficult days are over. There's nothing to be afraid of now. Dai Wenhuo nodded. Well said. Bian Han quickly turned around when he heard the voice. Thank you for your help today, young Master Dai. I just don't know. He was a little curious about the relationship between Yundong and this young Master Dai. Dai Wenhuo could tell at a glance. He immediately waved his hand and said in disdain, I'm friends with her fiancé. I helped her on account of him. Gu Yundong did not deny it. She did not tell Bian Han Dai Wenhuo's identity to prevent him from feeling uncomfortable. The carriage arrived at the entrance of the inn not long after. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 8:11 Husband and Wife Reunion. Shui Rong had been waiting at the door. When he saw their carriage stop, he hurriedly ran forward. Dai Wenhuo instructed Dai Zhong and Shui Rong to carry Bian Han down. Then he said to Gu Yundong, since the matter is settled, I'll go back first. Tell Shao Qingyuan that I'll look for him another day. Gu Yundong nodded. Thank you for today. Goodbye. With that, she led the way into the inn. Gu Dajiang and his sister had been waiting anxiously. After such a long time, no one had returned. They were afraid that Gu Yundong would be troubled by the Zhou family and could not bring Bian Han out. It was only when they heard footsteps outside the door that the two of them looked at each other and hurriedly opened the door. Gu Dafeng immediately saw Bian Han being carried and her eyes turned red. She quickly walked over. Father, you're back. Yundong brought you back. Yes, I'm back. I'm back. Bian Han was also so excited that his hands were trembling. Only at this moment, when he saw his wife who was also safe and sound and Gu Dajiang who was standing there with slightly red eyes and a smile, did he believe that all of this was not a dream. He was so excited that he was incoherent. It's all thanks to Yundong. I'm fine. We're all fine. Gu Dajiang hurriedly moved aside. Come in first. It's not a place to talk outside. Yes. Come in first. Gu Dafeng wiped her face and helped the person on the stretcher in. After entering the door, she exclaimed in surprise, Where's Yundong? Gu Yundong, who had been standing at the side and felt that she had a strong presence, was speechless. On the other hand, Gu Dajiang recognized her at a glance. He smiled and pushed her. Why are you dressed like this? Gu Dafeng was surprised. Gu Yundong spoke and his voice instantly became familiar. For the sake of the situation, Gu Qiuyue and Zhou Dafu didn't realize that I had also entered the Zhou mansion. They'll talk about it slowly after this matter. Let's put Uncle down first. After placing her on the bed, Dai Zhong took his leave. Gu Yundong gave Shui Rong some instructions before he left. Only 4 people were left in the room. Gu Dafeng was still emotionally unstable. She grabbed Bian Han's hand and cried tears of joy. Father Bian patted her. It's all right. Aren't we already out? We won't go in again. Yes, eldest aunt, it's all in the past. As Gu Yundong spoke, she took out 2 pieces of paper. This is the indenture of the 2 of you. Tomorrow we will go to the government office to eliminate this slave status. You will still be the same as before. Gu Yundong looked at the 2 of them and felt a little sad. In her impression, eldest aunt Gu used to be a straightforward person. She was the eldest sister and had Gu Dajiang under her. Although she was only 3 years older than Gu Dajiang, she had already taken on the responsibility of taking care of and protecting her younger brother. But now, not only was she extremely haggard, but her personality had also become trembling. From escaping to being separated from her children, to her husband's crippled legs, and finally being tortured and humiliated by Gu Qiuyue, reality forced her to change time and time again in order to survive. She had no choice but to be careful. Gu Dajiang couldn't help but tug at his fingers. The atmosphere became a little heavy. Fortunately, Shui Rong returned very quickly and brought back the doctor from the clinic next door. Gu Dafeng was stunned when she saw the doctor and looked at Gu Yundong. The latter nodded. The most important thing now is to treat Uncle's legs. Let's see how badly injured he is. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 8:12, There are always many ways. Gu Dafeng stepped back and looked at the old doctor expectantly. The old doctor had already asked Shui Rong about the situation before he came. He knew that the patient in front of him had been delayed for a year, so he could not help but be more cautious. He squatted down and carefully touched Bian Han's legs. Then he checked his pulse and finally lifted his pants to take a look. After a while, under everyone's nervous gazes, he shook his head slightly. I'm not good at medicine. I can't do anything about this patient's legs. Seeing that everyone's eyes instantly dimmed, the old doctor quickly said, However, it's not completely impossible to cure him. If you're capable, you can bring him to other medical centers. Yundong thought of the old doctor's clinic. It was indeed not big and there were only 2 doctors in charge. It was still much worse than Huimin Medical Center. Thus, after Shui Rong sent the old doctor away, Yundong comforted the 2 of them. I know Dr. He from Huimin Medical Center. His medical skills are very good, and his medical ethics are also very good. Although he seemed to be good at brain acupuncture, he could introduce them to reliable specialists. But the Huimin Medical Center is a little far from here. I'm afraid it's too late to go there now. Let's go back and rest for a day. After we recover, we'll go to the medical center tomorrow to see the doctor there. That's right. Gu Dajiang nodded. We've only seen 1 doctor. If 1 doesn't work, we'll see 2. If 2 don't work, we'll see 3. If you can't be treated in Xuanhe Prefecture, there's still the capital. Gu Dafeng was finally amused by the father and daughter's anxious comfort. All right, capital? That's far from us. You make it sound like you can go there casually. Gu Dafeng used to come from a village. At most, she had been to the county city. She had only gone to the prefectural city after fleeing the wilderness. She had come all the way to the Xuanhe Prefecture. However, her thoughts were still the same as before. In the countryside, when she was seriously ill, she would at most go to the county city to look for a doctor. If others said that she could not be treated, she would most likely go back and wait to die. Gu Dafeng would not be satisfied, but at most she would go to the prefectural city to treat his husband's illness. She had never thought of going to a place as far away as the capital. That was simply impossible for them. At most, she would do more work in the future and take good care of her husband. However, Gu Dajiang was different. He was currently studying at Tianhai Academy. Ignoring everything else, the students he knew came from many places. There was no lack of rich children from the capital who came to study. Moreover, it was not as if he did not know anyone in the capital. Last time he helped Commander Zhou catch the bandits. Commander Zhou had gone to the capital. He would thicken his skin and beg him later. The man was a friendly person and would definitely help find a doctor. Most importantly, his Yundong was capable enough to know the imperial physician, Song Dejiang. Look, there were still many ways. Anyway, you don't have to worry too much. There will be a way. Our Lun Yang will go to the capital to treat her illness later. The doctor said that she lacks an herb now. As long as we find it, Lun Yang's brain disease will be cured. Hearing him mention Madame Yang, Gu Dafeng was slightly stunned. Previously, she had been thinking about Bian Han and couldn't calm down to chat with Gu Dajiang. Hence, she didn't know what was going on with the Gu family. Now that he mentioned it, she could not help but ask, Is Lun Yang at home? What about Yunshu and Yunka? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 8:13. Yuanzhi is still alive. Gu Dajiang sat down and didn't hide it from her. It's all thanks to Yundong that Lun Yang is at home. Actually, I only found them a few months ago. To be honest, I was already prepared for the worst. I didn't expect Yundong to protect her mother and younger siblings. Only then did our family reunite. Gu Dafeng was very happy to hear that. That's good. You're all safe and sound. That's better than anything. Bian Han also nodded repeatedly, but, his children. He gently tugged at his hand and secretly took a few deep breaths. Finally, he raised his head and asked with difficulty, Dajiang, do you know anything about Mulan and her brother? Gu Dafeng also looked at him instantly. She had wanted to ask him for a long time, but she was afraid. Gu Dajiang fell silent, and Gu Yundong turned her head away slightly. Seeing this, Gu Dafeng and her husband understood everything. Their eyes immediately turned red and swollen as tears streamed down their faces. They shouldn't have asked. Indeed, they shouldn't have asked. Gu Yundong could not bear it. Aunt, it's all right, I know. Gu Dafeng waved her hand. We've already made preparations. There's nothing to eat and very little water for such a long journey, As she spoke, she choked up. There are robbers and murderers everywhere on the road. It wasn't easy for us to reach Qingyuan Prefecture, but we still encountered trouble. Their chances of survival were not high. We all know that. Yundong slowly squatted down and handed her a handkerchief. She said in a low voice, "Aunt, Cousin Mulan is indeed gone." As soon as she confirmed this, Gu Dafeng cried out. She could not take it anymore and started crying. Yundong let her vent her frustration and gently patted her back. After a long time, her crying gradually turned into sobs. She clearly wanted to try her best to control them, but it was especially difficult. Gu Dajiang looked at Yundong in disagreement, but the latter insisted that she should tell her aunt about Cousin Mulan first. Letting her cry was better than anything else. Bian Han's pain was much more restrained. Although he was also crying, his voice was still suppressed. He reached out and patted the back of Gu Dafeng's hand. "Stop crying. Let's not cry anymore. I feel terrible. I feel terrible. Children died before their parents. Her 2 children were still so young. How could they be gone? How could they be gone? But Aunt Yuanzhi is still alive." "What did you say?" Gu Dafeng raised her head abruptly. She felt like she was hallucinating. Bian Han also looked at Gu Yundong in surprise. Gu Yundong said, "Yuanzhi is still here. He was brought back to Yongning Prefecture by the Ding family. I brought him here. He's in the prefectural city now. We'll be able to see him when we go back later." Really? Are you serious?" Gu Dafeng grabbed Gu Yundong's shoulder. The anticipation in her eyes made her exert force. Gu Yundong did not feel any pain. She just smiled and nodded. "It's true. He's in the prefectural city. He's alive. Yuanzhi is still alive. He is still alive." There were still tears in Gu Dafeng's eyes as she looked at Father Bian, who was trembling with excitement. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Her mood fluctuated. A moment ago she felt that the sky was about to collapse. Now she was told that Yuanzhi was still around. In the end, the couple hugged each other and cried. It was almost dark when Gu Yundong brought the 2 of them into the carriage and went home. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 8:14, Family Reunion. Yes, home. After being separated for more than a year, they could finally go home. The carriage rumbled all the way to the small courtyard. Gu Dafeng and Bian Han, who were in the carriage, were much calmer. However, at this moment, they still clasped their hands tightly, nervous and expectant. It was not until the carriage stopped at the door that the waiter entered that they looked at each other and alighted from the carriage. Shui Rong wanted to carry Bian Han, but he was stopped by Gu Dajiang. He bent his back and carried Bian Han down from the carriage. Gu Dafeng stood at the entrance. She clenched her fists and secretly took a deep breath. The door was opened from the inside. Lu Xing quickly helped remove the threshold and let the carriage in. The people in the house heard the commotion and there was a series of banging sounds. Immediately after, someone ran out quickly. As he ran, he shouted, "Father, eldest sister, you actually went out early in the morning. You didn't wait for us to wake up. You're too bad. Eldest uncle, cousin, we got to know many people today. There are really students nearby. They even said that Tianhai Academy is very beautiful. Can we go tomorrow?" Gu Yong's legs were short and she ran slowly. She shouted as she struggled to rush out, "Slow down. Wait for me or I'll be angry." The few of them rushed out. Yunshu immediately ran in front of Gu Yundong and did not have time to see the others clearly. Bian Yuanzhi, on the other hand, was a step too late and shifted his gaze to the side. Then he was stunned. He looked at the familiar figure who always appeared in his dreams standing beside Gu Yundong. He looked at the man who was lying beside Gu Dajiang and looking at him eagerly. His expression became dazed. Gu Dafeng and Bian Han had already washed up before they came back. Although they looked thinner and haggard as their son, how could Bian Yuanzhi not know them? He staggered and was almost knocked down by Yunka, who rushed out from behind. The young lady quickly stopped in her tracks. "Cousin Yuanzhi, although I told you to slow down, you don't have to stop." However, Bian Yuanzhi didn't seem to hear him. He just stared ahead with tears in his eyes. The little girl turned around and saw large drops of tears falling from his eyes. She was shocked on the spot. Eldest sister, cousin," he cried, "because of me." Gu Yundong did not know whether to laugh or cry, but because of this sentence, Gu Dafeng rushed forward and hugged Bian Yuanzhi. Yuanzhi, I finally see you." Bian Yuanzi's hands were trembling and he did not dare to touch her. He heard Gu Daifeng's hoarse sobbing. He looked up at Gu Yundong in confusion, as if he wanted to ask her if it was true. Gu Yundong stepped forward and patted the confused Gu Yong's head. She whispered to Bian Yuanzhi, "You're not dreaming. Your parents have been found and they're back." Bian Yuanzhi's tears fell even harder. He reached out his hands and hugged Gu Daifeng's neck. Finally he raised his head and cried, "Father, Mother, where did you go? Where did you go? I thought I would never see you again in my life. I was so afraid. I was so afraid that you would leave me behind." Gu Daifeng hugged his small body and swayed slightly. "Don't be afraid. I'm here. I'm here. I won't let go of your hand again. Don't be afraid." Bian Yuanzhi cried even harder. Bian Han lay on Gu Dajiang's body and really wanted to go over and hug the mother and son. However, he had no choice but to wipe his tears and laugh. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 8:15. Yuanzhi needs father and mother. When the mother and son were done crying, Gu Daifeng finally stood up with Bian Yuanzhi in her arms. She was too thin and weak. When she got up, she felt a little dizzy. Gu Yundong quickly reached out to support her and said, "Let's go in first." "Okay, let's go in first." The few of them entered the central room and sat down. Gu Yunka opened her round eyes and looked curiously at eldest Aunt Gu. She was also extremely sad from Bian Yuanzi's crying just now. After crying for a while, her eyes were still sparkling. Gu Yunshu had some impression of his eldest aunt and uncle, so he obediently went over to greet them. Seeing this, Gu Yunka obediently greeted them under eldest sister's introduction. Gu Daifeng looked at the well-behaved children and felt her heart heat up. She said "I" a few times. Bian Yuanzhi was still in her arms. He had cried too hard just now and had yet to recover. Coupled with the fact that he had just met his parents after a long time, he only wanted to be an insensible child who refused to let go of his parents. It wasn't until a pair of hands appeared on his head that he slowly raised his head and looked at Bian Han. "Father." Gu Dajiang placed Bian Han on the chair beside him. He looked at his son who had grown much taller than a year ago, and felt especially grateful. Bian Yuanzhi slowly calmed down. However, when his gaze shifted to Bian Han's legs, he suddenly stopped. "Father, your legs?" "I'm fine. I just suffered a small injury." Bian Han didn't want him to worry too much, so he casually said. Then he changed the topic. "Yuanzhi has already grown up." Father almost couldn't recognize him. "I haven't grown up yet. Yuanzhi still needs parents." Gu Daifeng almost cried again. She felt extremely guilty and self-reproachful. It was the same for Bian Han. If he had dodged in time, his legs wouldn't have been injured, and he wouldn't have had to ask Qiuyue for help because of his fever. He wouldn't have been trapped in the Zhou mansion. Otherwise, he would have brought his wife back to Yongning Prefecture and reunited with his son. He was disappointing. "Alright, stop crying. Look at all of you. Your eyes are swollen tomorrow. Hurry up and wipe your faces. Let's eat first." Gu Dajiang interrupted the sad atmosphere and asked Auntie Nyo to serve the food. The Gu family had always made a lot of dinner. Auntie Nyo's status in the previous master's family was not high, so she did not have the chance to show off her culinary skills. After arriving at the Gu family, she could finally show off her skills. Especially since Miss did not hide anything and told her the cooking methods of several dishes, Auntie Nyo was the happiest in the kitchen every day. Especially since the master's family had returned yesterday. Chapter 8:16. Please feed them. Gu Daifeng looked at the young man in front of her and was still in a daze. Yundong was engaged? On the other hand, Bian Han had already learned from Dai Wenhuo that Gu Yundong had a fiancé. When he saw Shao Qingyuan, he sized him up. This man was indeed a handsome and elegant man. Moreover, he seemed to think highly of Gu Yundong. The two of them didn't know where Shao Qingyuan was from or what was going on at home. However, now wasn't the time to ask. After everyone got to know each other, they sat down to eat. Eldest Aunt Gu ate a bowl of porridge at noon. Bian Han also ate half a bowl after being brought to the inn. At this moment, she was a little hungry. However, when she was in the Zhou family, hunger had become a common occurrence. She was already used to it. Looking at the table full of dishes, the two of them were a little stunned. Not to mention the hunger in the Zhou mansion. Even before they fled, they had never eaten such a sumptuous dinner. Her eldest brother's current life was already so good? Gu Dajiang moved his chopsticks first. "Don't just stand there. Let's eat." We'll talk after we're done. Gu Yundong asked Aunt Nyo to bring 2 bowls of porridge over. She brought them to eldest Aunt Gu and Father Bian and said, "The doctor said that your stomachs are not good now and you need to recuperate first. It's not appropriate for you to eat too much oil or salt. Therefore, it'll get Aunt Nyo to make easy to digest food these few days. Porridge, noodles and so on. Let your stomachs recover first." Bian Yuanzhi, who was putting food into his parents' bowls, immediately dropped his chopsticks and went towards the vegetables. As Gu Dafeng listened, she felt that Yundong had really changed a lot. He was considerate and capable. The porridge and noodles were already very good. In the past, when she was at home, she would eat rough noodles and steamed buns for almost every meal. She had to eat them with soup. Looking at the porridge in front of them, they felt like they were living the life of a rich family. Hence she nodded. "Okay, I'll listen to Yundong." Bian Han also smiled. Unexpectedly, when the 2 of them turned around, they realized that their bowls were filled with vegetables. When they looked at Bian Yuanzhi, he was looking at them with a look of praise. Not only him but even Yunshu and Yunke looked the same. Clearly they had also picked up a lot of food for them. Gu Yundong did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Yuanzhi, although it's said that you can't eat fish or meat with a good stomach, it doesn't mean that you can only eat vegetables. Those shredded meat are not a problem." Bian Yuanzhi immediately felt embarrassed. Yunshu and Yunke looked at each other and picked up their chopsticks to pick up the meat again. Gu Dafeng quickly stopped her. That's enough. Stop eating. Everyone still wants to eat." Only then did the children stop and obediently eat their food. Only Bian Yuanzhi looked at his parents with admiration, as if he would be full just by watching them eat. Gu Dafeng's heart ached and swelled. When she was half full, she put down her chopsticks and fed her son. Although Bian Yuanzhi felt a little embarrassed as he had grown up, he still opened his mouth obediently and ate the food his mother fed him. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief. Although they did not treat Yuanzhi as an outsider, they were not his parents after all. Therefore, Yuanzhi was usually very sensible. He would consider everything carefully and not cause trouble for them. It was probably only in front of his parents that he could act like a child so brazenly. Yunshu looked at it and thought for a moment. He looked at his mother, but Madame Yang looked at Gu Dajiang as if she wanted to ask for food too. Gu Yundong was speechless. She did not see anything. Chapter 8:17, Shao Qingyuan's news. What surprised Gu Yundong was the youngest, Gu Yunke. The little girl was enjoying her meal. From time to time, she would look up at her second brother and cousin with obvious disdain. Despicable? Gu Yundong was stunned. After the little girl finished the food in her bowl, she said proudly, "I'm done. Second brother, come here. I'll feed you." Gu Yunshu, Gu Dajiang was speechless. Shao Qingyuan, Gu Yundong was speechless. Fortunately, she had swallowed the food in her mouth. Otherwise she would have spat it out. Gu Yunshu quickly lowered his head. He did not hear her. Only Madame Yang paused and silently handed her bowl and chopsticks to Yunke. "Kiki?" Gu Dajiang quickly stopped her. "Lun Yang, why do you want Kiki to feed you?" Madame Yang said, "Feeding seems to make the food taste better." "No, that's just your imagination." On the other hand, Bian Yuanzhi was a little embarrassed. Gu Yundong did not know whether to laugh or cry as he diverted Madame Yang's attention. "Mother, if you don't eat now, your favorite sour and spicy lotus root will be gone." When Madame Yang heard this, she quickly put away the bowl and stopped talking about feeding. Only then did everyone look away. Yuanzhi stayed in Gu Dafeng's arms and leaned against her. It was only when Yunshu and Yunke had finished eating and called him to come down that he reluctantly got off the bed and said to Gu Dafeng, "Father, Mother, I'll help Auntie Nyo tidy up the room. Can I sleep with you tonight?" "Of course you can." Bian Yuanzhi then dragged his cousins out. It was only when the 3 of them left the reception hall that they felt a little more at ease talking. At the mention of Bian Han's legs, Shao Qingyuan, who had been silent, suddenly asked, "Are Uncle's legs very serious?" Gu Dajiang glanced at him. He was climbing up the ladder quite quickly. He was calling Bian Han uncle just like that? Bian Han had already gotten over it. He touched his legs and said, "They're quite serious, but it doesn't matter if the legs can't be cured. Just as Yundong said, I can still do some carpentry." Mrs. Rin sold wooden carvings. "It seems that business is quite good." "It's good that you think that way," Gu Dajiang said. "But let's try visiting a few more medical centers. As long as there's a glimmer of hope, we won't give up." Gu Dajiang was a man. He knew very well that as the head of the family, Bian Han might sound relaxed, but he actually felt terrible. He wanted to take on the responsibility of a husband and father, not a burden to these two. Wooden carvings could indeed bring income to the family, but it was still inconvenient to live. He still had to rely on his wife and son. If this continued, he would still feel defeated. Let's go to Huimin Medical Center tomorrow, Yundong said. Xiao Qingyuan lowered his eyes. After a moment of silence he said, Huimin Medical Center is indeed the largest medical center in Xuanhe Prefecture, but according to what I know, a doctor who is good at treating legs and bones recently went to the medical center in Wanqing Prefecture. He was in the medicinal herb business now, so he had more contact with the medical center and was well informed. Wanqing Prefecture's medical center? Why did he go there? Xiao Qingyuan thought for a moment. To be the doctor in charge? Yundong choked. The Xian family used to live in Wanqing Prefecture, so the branch of Huimin Medical Center was not open there. Now that the Xian family had fallen, they immediately opened a branch there. However, it seemed that they had limited manpower, so they brought the doctors there. Then what should we do? Gu Dafeng asked worriedly. Chapter 8:18. Xiao Qingyuan has a candidate. Xiao Qingyuan had already put down his chopsticks. Hearing this he said, I have a candidate here. Who? Gu Dafeng asked anxiously. I'm opening a pharmacy in the prefectural city. I need a doctor to preside over the shop. Xiao Qingyuan looked at Gu Yundong. I've already told you that I've found a doctor. He happens to be good at this. If you think it's okay, I'll bring him over tomorrow to take a look at eldest uncle. The doctor had already arrived at the prefectural city and was now living in the courtyard behind the medicine shop. However, the pharmacy was still being repaired, so it was still a little noisy during the day. Xiao Qingyuan gave the old doctor silver so that he could go to any tea house to drink tea, listen to books, or go to a beautiful pavilion to play with birds with other old men. However, the doctor was not interested in these things. After he came to the prefectural city, he went to the nearest medical center to discuss medicine with them. Today was the first day. It was said that he had been scolded. When the old doctor returned, he complained to Xiao Qingyuan that that lousy medical center was not good at all. The doctors inside were useless and arrogant. Xiao Qingyuan suggested that he go to Huimin Medical Center to take a look. The old doctor planned to go there tomorrow. But there were patients here, he thought. The old doctor would definitely be more willing to treat people. Xiao Qingyuan had always been reliable. Gu Yundong knew that if that doctor did not have any ability, he would definitely not have suggested it. Therefore, her eyes immediately lit up. Without thinking, she said, All right, then bring him over tomorrow. With the matter settled, the few of them heaved a sigh of relief. After dinner, Xiao Qingyuan went back. The small courtyard was not very large. There were only a few rooms. It was already a little crowded for Yuanzhi and Yunshu to come, let alone eldest Aunt Gu and her husband. Since there was no place for Xiao Qingyuan to stay, he had to return to the pharmacy. After he left, Gu Dajiang let the two of them rest. After a long day, their emotions fluctuated. They cried and laughed at the same time, and most of their energy had disappeared. They were indeed very tired. She returned to her room and slept on the soft bed. Her son also returned to her side and lay between the two of them. Even though she was very tired, she could not fall asleep. After a long time, Bian sighed. I didn't expect to leave the Zhou residence and see Yuanzhi again. Gu Dafeng nodded. She really thought that she would be busy in the Zhou mansion for the rest of her life and be tortured by Qiuyue until the day she died. Bian Yuanzhi was sleeping in the middle. Chapter 8:19. Those things. At this moment, Gu Dafeng was especially grateful to Gu Yundong. Your cousin has really done too much for us. Yes, my cousin is very powerful. On the way to escape, Aunt and Yunshu and Yunka came to Yongfu village under my cousin's protection. Eldest uncle was also found by my cousin. My cousin does many more things. Speaking of Gu Yundong, Yuanzi's eyes were filled with admiration. Gu Dafeng and Bian looked at each other lovingly. Yes, you have to be as good as your cousin in the future. Bian Yuanzhi nodded hurriedly and began to talk about the days when he came to Yongfu village. He said that he met Yunshu's teacher as soon as he arrived in the county city. Then his cousin asked the teacher to take him in as a student. Gu Dafeng and her husband were stunned. What did you say? You went to school? Yes, my cousin said that you don't have to take the imperial examination, but you have to know how to read. If you study hard, your future will definitely not be bad. I'm studying in the county school with Yunshu now. Our teacher is very impressive. He used to be the top scholar and has very strict requirements for accepting students. Yunshu studied well and was chosen by the teacher. However, I don't even know how to read, so my cousin spent a lot of effort to get the teacher to accept me. Gu Yundong expressed that she did not. Gu Dafeng and her husband were stunned. Although Gu Yundong had told them some things today, she had never mentioned that Yuanzhi was going to study in a school. Moreover, this school was not one of the small private schools in the village. The teacher was a big shot. Gu Dafeng was speechless. Who would have thought that Yundong would give Yuanzhi what she wanted to offer but could not afford? Bian Yuanzhi was still talking. He said that the Gu family now had a workshop in Yongfu village and had more than 100 long-term workers. He also mentioned that there was a shop in the county city. Not long ago, she had opened a shop in the prefectural city and a milk tea shop with someone. It was also said that eldest uncle had entered the best school in the Xuanhe prefecture to study and had been personally assessed by the mountain elder. The person who introduced him was the top scholar of their school. He also said that Shao Qingyuan was highly skilled in martial arts. When Shao Qingyuan was questioned by eldest uncle, he stood at the entrance motionlessly under the sun and rain. Shao Qingyuan treated his cousin and treated them very well. He even said that his cousin had made super delicious cake and candy. Not only did they like it, but even their classmates liked it. He also talked about many things that he had experienced after coming to Yongfu village. Gu Dafeng and her husband were shocked at first, but then they became numb. They felt that many things in their minds had been overturned. They could tell that their eldest brother's family already had some assets now. If their eldest brother could afford a carriage and servants, their lives would definitely be worlds apart from before. However, the difference was not to this extent. Why did it sound like their eldest brother was even more powerful than the Zhou mansion that trapped them and made them tremble in fear? The impact was a little huge and the couple could not maintain their expressions. In the end, Yuanzhi was too tired and fell asleep as he spoke. Only then did the two of them close their eyes and fall asleep. It was probably because they slept too late and had not slept so peacefully for a long time, so they woke up a little late the next day. The Gu family did not disturb them. It was only when Shao Qingyuan brought the old doctor and shouted for the patient the moment he entered that the family of three got up. The three of them immediately felt a little embarrassed and quickly got up to leave. When they came out, everyone saw that their eyes were red and swollen. They knew that they must have cried again last night, so no one said anything. Chapter 820, Dr. Xiong. The old doctor's surname was Xiong and he had a bear-like temper. However, he was a very professional doctor. He could not wait to see the patient before he finished his tea. Looking at him, Gu Yundong thought of Song de Jiang. Were all capable and confident doctors so strange? However, she insisted that Bian Han finish his breakfast before going to the doctor. Dr. Xiong was a little unhappy at first, but when he heard that the other party's stomach was not good, he immediately waved his hand and asked him to hurry up and eat. When they finished eating and started to look at his legs, the family began to prepare for battle. Dr. Xiong washed his hands and quickly sat opposite Bian Han. Seeing that his entire body was tense, he hurriedly waved his hand. Relax, relax. It's just a look. The treatment hasn't started yet and it won't hurt. It's too early to be nervous. Bian Han laughed at his words and relaxed at that moment. Unexpectedly, in the next moment, Dr. Xiong knocked on his leg. He didn't know where it hit. Although it was just a light knock, it immediately hurt so much that tears were about to come out and cold sweat kept flowing out. The others' hearts tightened. Bian Yuanzhi hugged Dr. Xiong's hand. Don't hit me. It hurts too much. Dr. Xiong's mouth twitched. Then do you still want me to treat your father's legs? Gu Yundong was not good at medicine, but she knew that she could not disturb the doctor's treatment, so she pulled Yuanzhi over. Only then did Dr. Xiong continue to check. Bian Han's nerves tensed up again, afraid that he would do it again. However, Dr. Xiong did not do anything unexpected after that. After checking the legs, he retracted his hand and lowered his head in thought. Everyone looked at him, but no one said anything to disturb him. However, his silence made people a little anxious. It was Shao Qingyuan who asked him, "Can the legs be treated?" Oh, they can be treated. Really? Gu Dafeng was instantly excited. She clenched her fists and looked at Bian Han. Father, did you hear that? Dr. Xiong said it can be treated. Bian Han nodded repeatedly. How could he not be happy that his legs could be cured? Then Dr. Xiong, what do we need to prepare? Do we start treating him now? Gu Dajiang was equally excited. Dr. Xiong glanced at everyone and said, whether the legs can be treated or not, we still have to ask for his opinion. What do you mean? His legs can be treated, but it's painful to treat them. I'm afraid you won't be able to withstand it. How so? Dr. Bear shrugged. First, we'll have to break his bones again, then set them back together. Break his bones again? Everyone gasped. Gu Dafeng recalled the miserable cry of pain when her husband's legs were broken by a horse. Her face instantly turned pale and her body trembled slightly. Others might not know, but Gu Dafeng did. Although Bian Han was a man, he was actually especially afraid of pain. Dr. Xiong could also see this. The light tap just now was enough to make Bian Han break out in cold sweat and tremble in pain. The pain of having his bones broken again was really unbearable for him. Father Bian did tremble a little, but he looked at his legs and thought of his wife's and children's lives in the future. He gritted his teeth and said, "No, it's okay. If you want to break the legs again, so be it. I can endure it." He could endure it? His voice was trembling. Bian Han took a deep breath and looked at everyone's worried gazes. Finally, his gaze landed on Dr. Xiong. He closed his eyes and said, Come, let's break them." Dr. Xiong was speechless. Now is not the time. Chapter 821, Warm and Harmonious Atmosphere. Everyone was stunned again. Why? His body is still too weak now. Didn't you just say that his stomach isn't good either? At the very least, we have to wait until his body recovers and his spirit is strong before I can start treating him. Wouldn't that mean that he would have to worry for a while? Bian Han trembled again. However, he still had to listen to the doctor. Dr. Xiong continued, "Rest well during this period of time. He'll come to see you in a few days. When I think your body is good enough, we'll treat your legs." All right. Bian Han looked at Gu Dafeng, looking like he wanted to cry but had no tears. Gu Dafeng hesitated a few times, but she could not say anything. After seeing Gu Dafeng, Dr. Xiong took her pulse and confirmed that she was also weak and needed to recuperate with Bian Han. Then he prescribed a few medicinal cuisines and got someone to make them for them. Yundong was surprised. This Dr. Xiong was indeed very capable. He actually knew medicinal cuisine? After the matter was resolved, Dr. Xiong left the Gu family, leaving the entire family behind. They did not know if they should be happy or worried. However, the medicinal cuisines that Dr. Xiong mentioned needed to be studied carefully. Auntie Nyo took the list. Still, she couldn't read very well, especially since Dr. Xiong's handwriting was flamboyant. It looked too strenuous. Gu Yundong could only follow her into the kitchen. Coincidentally, she was also very interested in the medicinal cuisines. As for the shop, she would go there another day. Her aunt's matter was more important, right? Shao Qingyuan followed the instructions on the list and grabbed the herbs. Then he taught her how to recognize the words while watching her cook medicinal cuisines. After clarifying that, he left. Gu Dafeng felt bad. She felt that she should help. However, she was worried that she would be clumsy and waste all the ingredients and herbs. She could only help from the side. Yunshu, Yuanzhi, and the others had originally planned to go to Tianhai Academy today to take a look at the wall that was filled with names. Now they didn't go anymore. The two of them surrounded Bian Han and chatted non-stop. They used clumsy words to comfort him not to worry. His legs would be cured. It warmed Bian Han's heart as if he was really not afraid at all. On the other hand, Yunko was also looking around the kitchen. Gu Yundong and Aunt Nyo were already used to it, but Gu Dafeng was not used to it. He was afraid that she would be scalded and hurt. It was only when she saw her washing and picking the vegetables that she remembered what Yuanzhi had told him yesterday. The young lady liked to eat and cook. Madame Yang was taking care of the flower pots with Lu Hongxiu. She had been in Yongfu village for some time, as if she was afraid that something would happen to these flowers. She had already checked yesterday, but she was worried and checked again today. The entire small courtyard entered in a warm and harmonious atmosphere. Until Tong Shuitao returned. She went out early in the morning and only returned at noon. As soon as she entered, she went to the kitchen to look for Gu Yundong. At the door, she cracked a few times, causing everyone in the kitchen to turn to look at her. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. "You can't be considered mysterious anymore, all right?" She put down the things in her hand, washed her hands and followed her out. The two of them chatted at the side. Tong Shuitao looked mysterious. Gu Dafeng shook her head and smiled. She continued with her work. However, Gu Yundong did not return after a while. Auntie Nyo happened to have some words that she did not recognize and looked conflicted. Gu Dafeng took the list and went out to look for Gu Yundong. She did not expect them to be standing under the corridor talking. It seemed like she hadn't finished speaking when Gu Dafeng suddenly heard the words, Gu Qiuyue. She could not help but be stunned. Chapter 822, Aunt Gus Concerns. Gu Yundong also saw her. Coincidentally, Tong Shuitao had finished speaking. She instructed her to continue listening, so she turned around and asked, Aunt, what's wrong? Why are you looking for me? Gu Dafeng retracted her thoughts and held the list in her hand. Auntie Nyo wanted to ask you what medicine this is. Gu Yundong took it and walked in. After entering the kitchen and discussing with Auntie Nyo, she noticed that Gu Dafeng had not entered yet. Stunned, she walked out again. Aunt, what's wrong? I just heard Gu Qiuyue's name. Realization dawned on Gu Yundong and she answered straightforwardly, Yes, I asked Shuitao to keep an eye on the Zhou residence and watch Gu Qiuyue's movements. Do you want to deal with her? Gu Yundong did not hide it from her and nodded. She went too far. Yundong. Gu Dafeng held her hand anxiously and said, Forget it. Gu Qiuyue is indeed not a good person. But no matter what motive she had back then, she saved our lives in the end. For the past year I've been her slave for her. Take it as repayment for saving our lives. Now that your uncle and I have left the Zhou residence, we only want to have nothing to do with her from now on. Just pretend that you don't know her from now on. You don't have to. Gu Dafeng knew that she did not know what was good for her. Yundong wanted to take revenge on Gu Qiuyue for their sake. But Gu Qiuyue was old Master Zhou's concubine now. Old Master Zhou doted on her very much. What if he went against the Gu family because of Gu Qiuyue? Could it be that she would implicate them after being saved by her eldest brother? She felt that Yundong was very powerful after hearing what Yuanzhi said last night. However, Gu Dafeng had never experienced it herself. She could not clearly understand how powerful Gu Yundong was. However, she had stayed in the Zhou family for a year and had personally experienced how different the Zhou family was from the environment she used to be in. Gu Yundong saw through Gu Dafeng's concerns at a glance and understood her worries. Hence, she gently held her hand and smiled. All right, then I'll listen to you and let the grudge between the two of you be written off. Yes, she was referring to the feud between eldest Aunt Gu and Gu Qiuyue. However, she didn't say that the grudge between her and Gu Qiuyue didn't exist. Gu Yundong did not forget how Gu Qiuyue had conspired with Master Qian on the way to escape. She had gotten Fu Ming to lead them to chase after her family just to sell her and her younger siblings to Master Qian. That woman wanted them to live a life worse than death. At that time, Master Qian had chased after him with a group of people in a fierce manner, looking like he was determined to win. If not for the fact that she was smart and had a weapon in her hand, she would probably be in any brothel now. Her younger siblings might not even be alive. Was this something a biological aunt would do? Even a stranger would not be so vicious. Gu Yundong did not forget that when his father met Gu Qiuyue, she had deliberately misled him to Wanqing Prefecture. She had always remembered these grudges. Gu Qiuyue didn't save her life, so there was no such thing as a clean slate. Previously, Gu Yundong heard that she was already dead, so the hatred naturally dissipated. At most, Gu Yundong would lament that the wicked would be punished by the heavens. This person had finally gotten her retribution. But wasn't she still alive now? Furthermore, she was living happily. She was living a better and richer life than before. She even took pleasure in torturing eldest Aunt Gu and her husband. Then she had to settle the score properly. Chapter 823, Gu Qiuyue's Amazing Operation. Seeing that she had agreed, eldest Aunt Gu heaved a sigh of relief and smiled again. Gu Yundong pulled her into the kitchen and got busy again. But to Gu Yundong's surprise, before she could settle the score with Gu Qiuyue, the woman came to find trouble. After Gu Yundong found eldest Aunt Gu, she forgot about the portraits on the notice wall and did not tear them off in time. Unexpectedly, Mrs. Rin tore off the two portraits and followed the address on them to Aunt Ke's house. She told Aunt Gu that she knew where the two of them were. Aunt Gu was stunned. She had gone to the small courtyard frequently, especially because she had not seen Yunshu and Yuanzhi for a long time. Therefore, on the second and third day after the Gu family returned to the prefecture capital, she went to the small courtyard. Naturally, she knew about the joyous occasion of Yuanzhi and his parents reuniting. She had seen eldest Aunt Gu and Bian Han before, so she more or less knew about their experiences. While feeling pity for her, she also scolded Gu Qiuyue harshly. The person in front called herself Mrs. Ren. Could she be Mrs. Ren who was by Gu Qiuyue's side that Yundong mentioned? Aunt Gu pondered in her heart. She did not know what she was up to, so she nodded without batting an eyelid, indicating that she would bring her to meet the real person who was looking for her. Mrs. Ren was a little surprised. She thought that the person who was looking for them was Aunt Ku, but she did not expect this to be just a place for contact. Why was the person behind this so mysterious? For a moment Mrs. Ren thought too much. She felt that the person who had spent so much effort to find eldest Aunt Gu and her husband probably had a feud with these two people. Otherwise, why would they go through so much trouble? Thinking of this possibility, Mrs. Ren began to get excited. She followed Aunt Ku to look for Gu Yundong. On the way she could not help but ask, "Sister, who is this person? What's their relationship with the person in this portrait? Who's your sister?" Aunt Kes' expression turned ugly. She looked at Mrs. Ren, who was at least 10 years older than her, and almost couldn't help but spit on her face. She replied impatiently, "Ask them when you see them." "I don't know." Mrs. Ren felt that this person was difficult to get along with, so the smile on her face disappeared and she snorted. Aunt Ku brought her directly to Gus. Gu Yundong happened to be at Gus to look at the accounts and understand the recent income situation. Zheng Gang complained at the side. "Many people say that we have too little goods here. There's not enough for them to eat at all. The people in this prefectural city are rich. When they buy things, they plan to buy baskets of goods." Chapter 824. What's your relationship with the person in this painting? Gu Yundong's smile froze. She frowned slightly and looked at Aunt Ku. The latter introduced with a gloating expression, "This is Mrs. Ren." She tore off the missing person portraits on the notice wall and said that she knew the whereabouts of the people on the portraits. "She specially came to tell us." Gu Yundong was speechless. Yes, the portraits. She had forgotten to tear them off. However, Mrs. Ren actually wanted to tell her about the whereabouts of her eldest aunt and uncle? What kind of mess was this? Gu Yundong thought for a while, then nodded at Mrs. Ren and said, "Come with me. Let's talk in the backyard." Mrs. Ren had just finished sizing up the shop in front of her and was thinking that this shop was quite big. Hearing Gu Yundong's words, she quickly followed him with a smile. Aunt Ku also went to join in the fun. The three of them went to the backyard and sat on the stone bench. However, as soon as she sat down, Aunt Ku stood up. The weather was cold and the stone stool was also cold. She went to the second floor and took a cushion for herself. When Mrs. Ren saw this, she was a little envious. She was the oldest here and could not stand the cold the most. But since Gu Yundong did not mention it and Aunt Ku only took one, she could not say anything. However, she did not know that Gu Yundong had deliberately chosen this place. In any case, she did not want to bring the stranger up to the second floor to chat in such a good environment. She was wearing too many clothes and it was a little hot. It was good to have a breather. Su Changshan, on the other hand, did not know the inside story. He served tea to the three of them. Mrs. Ren took a sip and felt her body warm up. Gu Yundong asked, "You said that you have news about the people on the portraits? Is that true? You're not lying to me?" No. How can this be a lie?" "That's hard to say," Gu Yundong said lazily. "Previously, there were several people who provided fake news for the bounties, making people happy for nothing. I hope what you said is not fake, or it'll get someone to kick you out." Mrs. Ren trembled violently and immediately raised her right hand to make an oath. "I swear that what I said is true. If there's even half a lie, it'll be struck by lightning." Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows. This woman was quite ruthless to herself. In order to make Gu Yundong believe in her, Mrs. Ren quickly said, "The woman on this portrait is called Gu Dafeng, right? The man is called Bian, right?" Gu Yundong had more or less guessed what Mrs. Ren wanted to do. She was unhappy that Dai Wenhuo had bought her aunt and uncle and wanted to make things difficult for them. It was a pity that neither she nor Gu Qiuyue would be able to get what they wanted. At the thought of this, Gu Yundong became slightly excited. He looked at Mrs. Ren with shining eyes. Yes. That's her name. It seems that you really know where they are. Tell me, as long as the information you provide is true, he'll give you the bounty immediately." Mrs. Ren was also quite tempted by the bounty and immediately said, "Gu Dafeng and Father Bian are now in Magistrate Dais residence. Young Master Dai bought them." Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. "Really? You're not lying to me. They're in the Dai residence?" "Yes, every word is true." Gu Yundong laughed out loud. That's great. Aunt Ku raised her eyes slightly and snorted secretly. A drama queen. Seeing that she seemed to be very happy, Mrs. Ren frowned slightly and asked softly, "Miss, Can I ask you what their relationship is with you? Why did you spend such a high bounty to find them? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 825, Mrs. Rin takes a huge blow. Yundong was still smiling. Hearing this, he waved his hand and said it nonchalantly. They're my aunt and uncle. I've been looking for them for more than a year. It's just that I haven't heard from them. Now I finally have news. Thank you. As she spoke, she sounded a little sad. I don't know if they've had a good year or if they've suffered, but it doesn't matter. Now that I've found them, he'll bring them home and definitely let them live a good life. Not to mention anything else, at least they won't have to worry about food and drinks. They'll have servants by their side to serve them. They'll be able to live a happy life after suffering. Mrs. Rin felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Aunt and uncle? And she wanted them to live a good life? Was this person the daughter of the Gu family's first branch, as Concubine Gu had said? Ren's mother felt sick. She shook her head in a daze. How could it be? How could it be? Why weren't they enemies? Actually, Gu Yundong was right. Mrs. Rin and Gu Qiuyue were indeed very unhappy that Gu Dafeng and her husband could leave the Zhou residence and go to the Dai residence to follow young Master Dai, who had a bright future. Especially when Gu Qiuyue had fallen out of favor. Initially, this matter did not have much to do with Mrs. Ren. She did not have any grudges with Gu Dafeng. If they left, so be it. She would have less trouble. However, the bad thing was that Bian Han's words before he left completely ignited Zhou Dafa's anger. Gu Qiuyue's good, simple, and kind character instantly collapsed, and she even pushed Zhou Dafu into an extremely embarrassing situation. After all, Bian Han had said those words in front of Dai Wenhuo. Now that young Master Dai knew that his concubine was actually such a vicious person, not only did he seem like a joke, but his taste was bad, so muddle-headed that he was fooled by a woman. Hence, Gu Qiuyue had fallen out of favor. Not only her, even Mrs. Ren was affected. In the past, Zhou Dafu could be tolerant of Mrs. Ren on account of his mother because Mrs. Ren usually spoke eloquently and did not make any big mistakes. However, this did not mean that Mrs. Ren could lie to him in front of everyone. Back then she was the one who said that the couple was selling themselves. She said that Gu Qiuyue was kind and compassionate to accept them. Bullshit. What did she take him for? A servant actually fooled the head of the family. Not selling her was already the last act of filial piety to the old madam. Zhou Dafu no longer cared about her confession and apology. He didn't even look at her. Mrs. Ren's heart was filled with hatred. She wished she could rush to the Dai residence and kill this couple. Hence, when Gu Qiuyue was indignant and wanted to cause trouble for them, Mrs. Rin thought of the two portraits. The two of them also guessed who the person was and finally felt that there were only two possibilities. One was enemy and the other was family member or friend. However, no matter what, if they cared about Gu Dafeng and her husband, they would definitely go to the Dai residence to ask for them. Young Master Dai had just bought Gu Dafeng and her husband back for less than 2 days. He would definitely not be willing to give them back. Wasn't there a conflict now? In any case, even if there was no big conflict, a small trouble was enough to make Dai Wenhuo's impression of Gu Dafeng and her husband worse. At the thought of Dai Wenhuo, Mrs. Ren's hope was instantly reignited. She immediately said, "Miss, although the other party is your family, now that they have been bought by young Master Dai, they have already become servants of the Dai residence. Even if you want to bring them back to enjoy life, I'm afraid there's nothing you can do. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 826. I happen to know young Master Dai. Yes, that was it. Mrs. Rin felt a little better. She suddenly felt that this seemed to be more painful for Gu Dafeng. Just think about it. It was not easy for her to find her family, but she could not reunite with them. The good days were clearly close, but she could only be a servant and continue to serve others. So what if Gu Yundong opened a shop, had money and had servants? Wasn't Gu Dafeng still a slave? This feeling of helplessness was the most interesting. Mrs. Rin could not help but smile as she thought about it. Aunt Ku also smiled slightly. Gu Yundong laughed twice and waved his hand. It's all right, it's all right. I happen to know young Master Dai. He's a loyal person and has a good temper. If he knows the ins and outs of the matter, he will definitely let my aunt and uncle come back with me. When the time comes, They can still live a good life after being expelled from the slave registry. No matter what, thank you for today. He knew young master Dai? The corners of Mrs. Ren's lips froze halfway. She was in a daze. Yundong was still laughing, mainly because she really could not hold it in anymore. This woman actually came to her door to seek abuse. She would feel sorry if she did not provoke the visitor with a few words. Cough cough, it was better to restrain herself. Yundong reached out and patted Mrs. Ren's shoulder. She said gratefully, "It's all thanks to you. Otherwise, I don't know when we would have met again. I'm really too happy. I can't wait any longer. I'll go look for young Master Dai now and meet my aunt and uncle. Thank you." With that, she stood up and ran off without even mentioning the bounty. However, at this moment, how could Mrs. Ren think of the bounty? She stood up numbly. She seemed to have heard Aunt Ku say that she would walk her out. She nodded blankly and walked out. Yundong only came down from the second floor after Mrs. Ren left Gus. He looked at Aunt Ku. "She's gone?" "She's gone." Aunt Ku looked at her speechlessly. "In order to shirk that bounty, you've put on a good show." "You can't say that." "What do you mean by shirking?" "My aunt and uncle have already returned home, so the news she provided that they're in the Dai residence is fake. She lied to me and am already being polite by not kicking her out. She still wanted a bounty? Dream on." Yundong returned to the counter and continued talking to Zheng. Aunt Ku pointed at her forehead. "Anyway, you're right. There's nothing else for me to do here. I'll go back first." "Don't go back yet. Let's go back to the small courtyard for dinner later. Next time." Aunt Ku waved her hand and left. Now that the Gu family was reunited, she did not want to join in the fun. It was better to go home. Chapter 827. It's hers. Yundong thought about it. Wasn't it the place where Shao Yuan's family used to live? That position? Yundong asked curiously. "I remember that there's a group of local tyrants living there. They're quite fierce." Su Changshan nodded. "Indeed. When my mother was looking for them, she was deceived by that person. The person didn't tell us that there were local tyrants who would wander outside. My mother saw that it was close to Su Qing's shop and the rent wasn't expensive, so she quickly rented it. In the end, on the day we moved, there was indeed a local tyrant who came looking for us." At this point he laughed. "But for some reason, although the local bully was very arrogant when he came to our door, when he saw us he suddenly cowered. I didn't even have time to take a stick before they ran away in a hurry for no reason. It was as if they were afraid of me and never came again." Yundong blinked and quickly understood. When Gus opened, the local gangsters were waiting outside to cause trouble. Therefore they must have seen Su Changshan as a worker and knew that he was from Gus. Gus had a powerful backer, so they were afraid of Su Changshan, so they naturally didn't dare to come and cause trouble. Zheng, who was at the side, also laughed out loud. "This is not inexplicable. These local tyrants have come to find trouble with Gus in the past, but they were ruthlessly taught a lesson by the boss and Qingyuan. They're afraid. I reckon that they must know that you're a worker here." Su Changshan was surprised. "Is that so? In that case, it's all thanks to boss and young Master Shao. Regardless of the reason, since you're our shop's assistant, if you encounter trouble, you can tell the shopkeeper or me. If we have the ability to help, we won't ignore it." If he became her shop assistant, he would be hers. Su Changshan nodded repeatedly. "Hee, thank you, boss. But we're no longer in trouble. I haven't seen those local tyrants for a long time. Ever since we moved in, not only have they not come to my house, but they haven't even come near our house. Shao Yuan even said that she has to thank me for this and gave us 2 pots of flowers. Oh, Shao Yuan is our neighbor, a little girl." Yundong exclaimed. "Is it Shao Yuan who grows and sells flowers at home?" Yes. "Boss, do you know her?" "That's right. I didn't expect the two of you to become neighbors. You're quite fated." Su Changshan chuckled again. After they said a few words, another guest came. Su Changshan hurriedly went to entertain them. Yundong went to the storeroom to take a look and asked about the delivery. She thought that there was a huge demand now and she needed more people to deliver the goods. In particular, her business was actually quite eye-catching. She had to hire some skilled people. Chapter 828. She's the one who should enjoy her life. Mrs. Ren looked at Qiuyue in front of her. The corners of her mouth opened and closed for a long time, but she could not say a word. Qiuyue was extremely anxious. "Say something." What's their relationship? No, not an enemy but a relative, and Mrs. Rin wanted to cry but had no tears. She slowly told Qiuyue what she had found out. Qiuyue was stunned. She fell back into her chair in disbelief. Her pupils constricted as she muttered to herself, "You're saying that that person is Gu Yundong? She opened a shop and is rich now. She even knows the young master of the prefecture magistrate's family. She will bring Gu Dafeng and his wife back and enjoy life?" As she spoke, she suddenly laughed. "Mrs. Rin, are you joking with me?" She did not believe that Gu Yundong was still alive. How could Gu Dafeng enjoy life? What? Why could she only be someone's concubine and be tortured by the main wife every day? Now she was even despised by the old master. And Gu Dafeng, Gu Yundong, and the others had to live better and better? There was no such logic. She was the one who was supposed to enjoy life. Qiuyue suddenly stood up. "I don't believe it. I want to take a look. I have to see it with my own eyes." As she spoke, she rushed out. Mrs. Ren's expression changed and she hurriedly hugged her. "Aunt, calm down." "I'm not calm. I just can't let them have a good life." Her eyes were red with hatred. She was indignant about Gu Dafeng, but she really hated Gu Yundong. If she hadn't caused Master Qian's death back then, Master Qian's subordinates wouldn't have blamed her. They had chased after her and wanted to take her back to report. She wouldn't have been separated from Fu Ming and her daughter wouldn't have died tragically. If not for Gu Yundong, their family would still be together. It was all because of her. Because she hated Gu Yundong but had nowhere to vent her anger, when she saw Gu Dafeng and her husband who were close to Gu Yundong, she brought them back to the Zhou family to torture and humiliate them. She wanted them to live a life worse than death to atone for Gu Yundong's sins. The more Qiuyue thought about it, the more she hated it. Mrs. Rin could barely hold her. Seeing that there were people poking their heads over, she panicked and pinched Qiuyue hard, finally waking her up from the pain. Mrs. Rin said anxiously in a low voice, "Aunt, calm down. There are people staring at us outside now. Do you want to be sold by master?" Qiuyue shuddered. Of course not. She couldn't cause any more trouble now. Otherwise, Zhou Dafu would lose his last bit of patience. But Mrs. Rin pulled her back to her seat and said softly, "I know Auntie is indignant, but it's already so late." Chapter 830. She's going to tear them up. Gu Yundong glanced in Gu Qiuyue's direction again before walking towards the carriage. The carriage door opened and Yunshu and Yuanzhi jumped out. Then they turned around and let Gu Dafeng, who was behind them, get out. Gu Yundong smiled. "Aunt, you're here?" "That's right." Gu Dafeng had been recuperating well for the past 2 days and was much more energetic. The two children said that I couldn't stay at home all day and insisted on dragging me out for a walk. Coincidentally, they wanted to come to the shop to take a look, so I came with them. "You should come out for a walk. Didn't Dr. Xiong say that walking is good for your health?" Bian Han couldn't come out because of his legs, and he didn't want to trouble others, so he continued carving wood at home with a knife. Shao Qingyuan said that he would get someone to make a wooden wheelchair for him. In any case, it would take a long time for him to recover after he treated his legs. It would be more convenient to sit in a wooden wheelchair. However, it was not done yet. He had to wait a few more days. "Sister, is this our shop?" Yunshu walked inside excitedly. He had been in the prefectural city for a few days, but he had never come to the shop because of various things. Now he finally saw it. Yuanzhi was still standing on the spot, holding Gu Dafeng's hand. Ever since he reunited with his parents, he had become different. With someone to rely on, he felt much more at ease. The carriage behind the two of them was pulled away by Lu Sheng, who had brought them over. The area at the entrance instantly became much empty. Hence, when Mrs. Rin, who was not far away, stepped back and no longer blocked Qiuyue, she immediately saw Gu Dafeng and her son holding each other's hands. How could this be? Qiuyue widened her eyes in disbelief. Gu Yundong had actually asked Gu Dafeng to come over from young Master Daya's side. Not only that, but Gu Dafeng had also put on new clothes. She was radiant and reunited with her son. It was as if all the suffering before was an illusion. Her good days had really come. She couldn't stand it. She couldn't stand it. Gu Qiuyue's eyes turned red as she walked towards Gus. Mrs. Rin cursed in her heart and quickly hugged her. Aunt, calm down." "How can I calm down? Gu Yundong clearly deserves to die, but she actually opened such a big shop now." Gu Dafeng should have been stepped on by others and served others as a slave for the rest of her life. But now, she's actually wearing gorgeous clothes and reunited with her son. Someone even drove a carriage for her. What? Even she didn't have any of these. What right did these two bitches have to enjoy it? She couldn't stand it. Qiuyue exerted all her strength to break free from Mrs. Ren's grip. Chapter 831, Resurrection. Mrs. Ren heaved a sigh of relief and continued, "And don't forget that Gu Yundong knows young Master Dai from the prefecture magistrate's office. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to bring Gu Dafeng and his wife home in just half a day. Later she will complain to young Master Dai. If young Master Dai wants to pursue the matter, old master will be the first to not let you off." Qiuyue listened and finally calmed down completely. Her flushed face gradually returned to normal. Mrs. Ren continued, "I didn't bring you here today to agitate you to risk your life. I wanted you to see with your own eyes that their lives are good now. You can't touch them easily." Qiuyue suddenly turned around and glared at her. She sneered. "Are you trying to tell me that I'm just a concubine who has fallen out of favor? The tables have turned. Do I have to kowtow and apologize to them when they see us? No, I want you to know that you can only deal with them if you're strong and stand higher than them." Qiuyue was stunned for a moment. After a while she snorted. "You make it sound so easy. How can I stand higher than them? I'm just an unloved concubine now. I don't have money or anyone in my hands. I don't even know young Master Dai." Mrs. Ren wanted to roll her eyes. This person was really insensible. That's why you have to fight for it. You have to obtain old master's love again and become the mistress of the Zhou mansion. Mrs. Ren's eyes were shining. You have to do everything you can to squeeze Madame out. When you can make a decision in the manner, you will be able to know the madams of the real rich families in the prefecture city. So what if you don't know young Master Dai? Can't you know Miss Dai and Madame Dai? As long as you build a good relationship with them, what else do you have to worry about? The picture that Mrs. Ren had drawn for her was so beautiful that she began to tremble with excitement. Yes, so what if Gu Yundong knew young Master Dai? When she got to know Madame Dai, she would tell Madame Dai that Gu Yundong was shamelessly hooking up with other men and wanted to seduce young Master Dai to marry into the Dai family. At that time, she would not even need to do anything and Gu Yundong would be directly dealt with by Madame Dai. Perhaps in order to prevent future troubles, not only Gu Yundong, but the entire Gu family including Gu Dafeng, would be thrown into jail and finished together. Qiuyue laughed. She was so excited that her eyes were red and her fingers were cracking. Mrs. Ren heaved a sigh of relief. Qiuyue was a country bumpkin who didn't know anything. In addition, she was blinded by hatred, so she fell for her tricks. She knew very well that even if Qiuyue got rid of Mrs. Zhou, she might not be able to become the first wife. Chapter 832, The Jumpy Yunshu and Yuanzhi. Qiuyue looked at Gus unwillingly and left angrily. Neither of them knew that not far behind them squatted a woman who had her ears pricked up and was pretending to wipe her shoes. Seeing that they were about to leave, that person stood up and walked towards Gus with her head lowered. Gu Yundong was introducing the items in the shop to Gu Dafeng. When he turned around and saw Tong Shuetao, he nodded slightly and said, "Aunt, go upstairs and rest for a while." Then she called out to Yunshu and Yuanzhi who had already gone to the backyard. "The two of you help Aunt to the second floor and enjoy the scenery." Eldest Aunt Gu looked at her helplessly. "What do you mean by helping me? It's not like I can't walk. Why do I need to help?" However, Yunshu and Yuanzhi had already run over quickly and grabbed her hands from both sides. "Aunt, this way. Be careful." "Mother, let's go to the second floor. I heard from Kiki that the second floor of this shop is very beautiful. The seats upstairs are soft and comfortable." Gu Dafeng looked at the two of them lovingly and let them hold her hand as they walked upstairs. Gu Yundong waved his hand. "Il pour tea for you." As she spoke, she really walked towards the backyard. Tong Shuetao hurriedly followed. The two of them asked as they walked, "Have those two left?" Tong Shuetao nodded. "They went home." "What did they say?" "I didn't dare to get too close, but when Qiuyue lost control, I vaguely heard something about unwillingness. Mrs. Ren persuaded her to go back and get pregnant first before becoming the first wife. I couldn't hear what happened after that, but I think she mentioned young Master Dai and Madame Dai." Gu Yundong walked to the kitchen and poured fruit tea for them while smiling. "Looks like the backyard of the Zhou mansion is about to welcome a storm of blood." Miss, what should we do? Yundong placed the cups on the tray. Tong Shuetao hurriedly picked up the teapot and the two of them walked to the second floor of the shop. What should we do? Otao, Concubine Gu has been with Zhou Dafu for more than a year, right? I heard that Zhou Dafu dotes on her, but she is not pregnant yet. Tong Shuetao was stunned. Miss, you mean, not necessarily. It's only a year. Gu Yundong shook her head. It's normal for some people to take 3 to 4 years to get pregnant, but, until now Zhou Dafu only had one son. He didn't even have a daughter. Qiuyue wasn't his only concubine. She smiled and said nothing more. They were already standing on the second floor. Tong Shuetao didn't understand. But what? Why did Miss say half of it? Gu Yundong walked into the attic on the second floor and saw the two children lying on the sofa. It's really comfortable. I can even sleep on it. Chapter 833, Misread. The two children heard the commotion and stood up in a second. Gu Yundong walked in and looked at the two of them with a faint smile. The two little guys chuckled at her and sat back down. They even jumped on the cushions. Eldest sister, it's too comfortable here, so the small people in our hearts came out and spoke by themselves. We weren't the ones who said those words just now. Yes, it's not us. Bian Yuanzhi nodded vigorously with a serious expression. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. Just continued to make up stories. Their imagination was quite wild. Even the small people in their hearts had come out. Would another little person appear later? Would the two little people fight in their minds? Alright, I won't stop you in your own home. If you want to jump, then jump. However, you can't do this when you're outside. Yunshu immediately ran over. No, we're very obedient outside. Everyone says that I'm cute and wants to snatch me home to be their son. Yuanzhi covered his mouth and laughed at the side. There were really people who saw that Yunshu was smart, good at studying, obedient and good-looking. They said that they wanted to bring him home. In the end, Yunshu was so frightened that he thought it was true. He lectured that person for the entire afternoon, saying that it was wrong to abduct children. Other people's children would be ingrates if they were brought back. If he left his parents, sister, he would not be able to eat or sleep. Then he would die of depression and haggardness. Then he would not let them off even if he turned into a ghost. The corners of the person's eyes twitched and he had a splitting headache. He repeatedly promised and raised his hands to swear that he would not snatch him back before Yunshu was willing to let it go. From then on he was given a nickname in school, the relentless boy after death. Yunshu did not say these things. He felt that this nickname was not good and would damage his image. Gu Yundong knocked Gu Yunshu's head and placed the tray on the table. She then asked, "Where's eldest aunt?" She just saw a vendor walking past below by the window. Eldest aunt went down. As soon as she finished speaking, Gu Dafeng returned. Gu Yundong asked curiously, "Aunt, what did you see?" "I'm fine. I saw wrongly." She had been looking down from upstairs and almost thought that the person carrying the burden was her fourth brother. However, when she walked down she realized that it was not the case. Now that she had reunited with her eldest brother, the whereabouts of the others were clear. Only her fourth brother was still unknown. Gu Yundong saw that she was unwilling to say more, so she did not ask further and handed her a cup of fruit tea. The fruit tea was sour and sweet. Chapter 834, To the Milk Tea Shop. Now, Yunshu said pitifully, "We only have a few days of vacation left. I've agreed with Yuanzhi that I have to go to Aunt Kes' house and let him see the courtyard I lived in back then. I also have to go to Tianhai Academy to experience the strong academic atmosphere. I also have to go to the bookstore and find a storybook. No, find scriptures to read." There were so many places he had to go. His schedule was too full and he was so busy. It was really not easy. Gu Yundong felt sympathy for him. She thought that since there was nothing important in the afternoon, she might as well go. "Alright, I'll take you there. At this time there shouldn't be many people. It wouldn't be a problem to bring the two children over." The milk tea shop allowed children, but it was only limited to people under the age of 10. Moreover, most of the people who brought children went to private rooms. The two children immediately cheered and raised their heads to finish the fruit tea in their cups. Gu Dafeng shook her head helplessly. She drank very slowly. The doctor said that her stomach was not good now, so she had to drink and eat slowly to avoid getting injured too quickly. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Gu Yunshu and Bian Yuanzhi went to the cabinet on the wall to look for storybooks. I've never seen this before. Let's bring it back. Last time, Junjie said that he couldn't find this book in the bookstore in the county city for a long time. They'll bring it back for him. He'll definitely be happy. When Gu Dafeng heard this after drinking, she immediately frowned slightly and asked Gu Yundong softly, "Is that okay? Can they read storybooks? Will it affect their studies? What if the teacher finds out and is disappointed in them and punishes them?" Gu Yundong comforted her. "It's all right. Mr. Qin doesn't object to students reading miscellaneous books. As long as they have a sense of propriety and it doesn't affect their studies, it doesn't matter if they read some storybooks. If it affects normal classes, he will confiscate the students' miscellaneous books and carry out." Yes, special education. Gu Dafeng did not understand special education, but from what Gu Yundong said, it was allowed by the teacher. Moreover, the teacher was the top scholar, so there was definitely no problem. Gu Dafeng was relieved. The two children had also picked 3 books and put them away. They smiled at Gu Yundong. Gu Yundong crossed his arms and looked at them with a half-smile. "Did a small person crawl out of your heart just now and control your hands to get the storybook? Sister, you're really good at predicting. Damn you, glib-tongued." The group went downstairs and informed Zheng Gang. Then they rode the carriage to the milk tea shop. Tong Shuitao did not go. Chapter 836. Gu Yundong is bankrupt? When she reached the counter, she asked the two children, "Have you thought about what to eat and drink?" "I want to drink milk tea and eat those fries," Yunshu said quickly. "I want double-skim milk." Yuanzhi had a special fondness for this. "And chicken nuggets." Gu Yundong looked at eldest Aunt Gu again. The latter did not know how to read and did not know what delicious food there was. She was a little nervous. But with Gu Yundong by her side, she quickly calmed down. "Just order. I don't know what to drink." Gu Yundong thought for a moment and said to the girl, "Then give me another pot of osmanthus tea and a plate of osmanthus cake." She said to eldest Aunt Gu, "Osmanthus tea is good for the stomach. During this season, the osmanthus flowers this year have been plucked and dried. The osmanthus flowers in new Tea Pavilion are all fresh." "All right, I'll try." Gu Yundong said to the girl, "That's all for now. We'll order whatever we want later. We want a private room. The type that children like." When it was renovated, there were many types of private rooms. Gu Yundong did not know which one was still empty, so she could only ask the waiter. The girl's hand under the counter gently tugged, then nodded with a smile. "All right, I'll get someone to bring the guest to the private room." The girl first noted down what they had ordered. Then she found another young round-faced girl and led them inside. Before Gu Yundong left, she asked, "By the way, where's Su Qing? I saw her yesterday when I came." Su Qing happened to be resting today, so she didn't come. Gu Yundong nodded and left. As soon as she left, she disappeared behind the door. The girl at the counter suddenly crumpled the paper in her hand into a ball and threw it on the ground. What kind of person is she? She's really shameless. She's so annoying. Another slightly older girl happened to walk behind the counter. When she saw this, she could not help but ask, "What happened? Who made you angry and threw the order away?" As he spoke, he squatted down and picked up the paper. He placed it on the table and smoothed it out. However, the ink on it had completely smudged the words. It was impossible to see what the customer had ordered. The girl could not help but frown. "Shao, what does it say? What do you care what she wrote?" The lady frowned even more badly. "What's going on? This customer offended you and made you have such an attitude? This won't do. The boss has said that anyone who comes as a guest and has to be treated well." Sister Lan, you don't understand at all?" Shao snorted. "What kind of guests are they? What's going on?" Shao glared at her fiercely. "You don't know, but that woman came yesterday too." Naturally, in everyone's hearts, she was not as prestigious as the other two bosses. Moreover, Nie Shuang and Madame Dai had brought many people with them. Boss Gu only had Su Qing. Su Qing's family background was not particularly good. Therefore, gradually, the shop was divided into several factions. In the beginning, Wei Lan thought that Su Qing was alone and would probably be ostracized by everyone. She did not expect her to be so popular, especially with the few old women in the kitchen. Therefore, even though she seemed to be alone, the people in the shop did not become enemies with her. Everyone seemed to be harmonious with her. During this period of time, everyone's mental state had more or less changed. As for Shao Yi, she had the biggest change in temperament here. Because she felt that she belonged to Madame Dai and was superior to others. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 838, she said thank you. Wei Lan did not like her very much, but she did not dare to offend her. The balance between the three bosses was very important. If she broke this balance, she would probably not be able to stay here anymore. Sighing inwardly, Wei Lan brought the menu to the kitchen and got someone to quickly prepare the food. When it was done, she personally carried the tray over. The round-faced girl arranged for Gu Yundong and the rest to be in a private room with a carpet and toys. Gu Yundong regretted it the moment she entered. This place was suitable for Kiki to come over at her age. The two kids were a little old after going to school. Just as she thought this, she saw Yunshu and Yuanzhi go in happily. Then they started playing with the puzzles. I've solved the puzzles several times. Then why are you still playing? I want to challenge speed. I want to see how quickly I can solve it. Last time I saw that the headmaster did it in less than 5 minutes. I want to be faster than him so that I can go to the headmaster and show off. Gu Yundong, your aspirations are really too great. This private room is not bad. After the round-faced girl left, eldest Aunt Gu felt much more at ease. She looked around the private room and seemed to like it very much. Especially when she saw the two children playing on the carpet, she was even more satisfied. Gu Yundong and her sat on the sofa at the side. This is just one type of the sofas. When this place closes, it'll bring eldest aunt to check all the private rooms. Why would I need it? Of course. After all, I haven't seen all of them yet. Eldest Aunt Gu smiled and pointed at her. So you want to go yourself? The two children who were playing over there also heard it. We want to go too. You're going back to the county in a few days. There's no chance. Yunshu quickly stood up. Then there's no time like the present. Let's do it today. Let's wait here until closing time and then look at every room. You're really impulsive. Let me think. It was mainly because Su Qing happened to be resting today and the others in the shop did not know her. They had seen the old women in the kitchen. After all, she was the one who taught them how to make milk tea. It just wasn't convenient. Moreover, the shop closed relatively late. They didn't tell their family when they came out today and their family might be worried. Just as she was thinking about it, there was a knock on the door of the private room. Gu Yundong looked up. Come in. Wei Lan opened the door and walked in with a tray. She smiled and placed the things on the table. Then she said, this is the milk tea, osmanthus tea and osmanthus cake that the customer ordered. As for double skim milk and the other two snacks, please wait a moment. Chapter 839, Demanding a Beating. Wei Lan was a little annoyed. Was there no end to this? She was just a guest. Why did she have such a big opinion? She had never had an unhappy conflict with her, right? I'm asking you a question. Answer me. Shao Yi tugged at her. Wei Lan secretly took a deep breath and quietly pulled back her sleeve. She said calmly, no, be it that girl or the others, they're all quite easy to get along with. They're very polite. I don't believe you. It must be because they're in the room. You couldn't tell. If you don't believe me, why are you asking me? Wei Lan was not willing to continue chatting with her. She carried the tray and turned around. I'm going to get busy. There are guests outside again. Hurry up and entertain them. Shao Yi turned her head and saw a familiar young lady walking in. A smile suddenly appeared on her face and she hurriedly went up to her. Wei Lan shook her head and went to the kitchen to bring the other snacks from Gu Yundong's room. When she walked into the room, she saw her picking up the teapot and pouring tea for Gu Dafeng. Wei Lan took another look. She was indeed not as elegant, slow, and dignified as the young ladies of other rich families. She looked very casual. Miss, here are your tea and snacks. Please enjoy. Gu Yundong thanked her again. When she was arranging them, he asked casually, what's your name? Miss, my name is Wei Lan. Wei Lan. Gu Yundong murmured softly and continued to ask, how does it feel to be a shop assistant here? Yesterday she came over to check on the guest reactions. Today she wanted to understand the thoughts of the staff working here. Wei Lan stopped what she was doing and looked up with a smile. Of course it's good. Our new tea pavilion is the only shop in the entire Xuanhe prefecture that only sells milk tea to female customers. I'm very happy to be able to work here. Others are envious of me for becoming a female employee of new tea pavilion. Is that so? Yundong smiled and did not ask further. She turned around and called out to the two people who were still working hard to solve the puzzles. Everything is here. Hurry up and wash your hands. Otherwise it will get cold later. Yunshu had just finished the last puzzle, but it had been a long time and he felt a little defeated. Bian Yuanzhi patted him on the shoulder. It's okay. Let's work harder. You have to think like this. The teacher is so many years older than you. When you reach the age of the teacher, you will definitely be able to solve it faster than him. Yunshu was instantly comforted. His eyes lit up as he said, That's right. The teacher is already so old. His hands are much older than mine. Then he shook his chubby hand.